The Honourable Datuk Sri Setia Awang Haji Hamzah bin Haji Sulaiman, Minister of Education, Brunei Darussalam, Ms. Haslina Taib, the CEO, Dynamic Technologies and Chair of the ASEAN Business and Investment Roundtables and the ASEAN Business and Investment Summit 2021, the Honourable Yanti Rahman, Chair of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council 2021, Haji Musa Adinin, Chairman of the ASEAN Business Awards, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and all of our guests who join us from across the Southeast Asian region and beyond, a very warm welcome to our roundtable on skills for a digital age. Now, this is part of a series of events under Brunei's chairmanship of ASEAN 2021, hosted by the ASEAN Business Advisory Council. I'm Jenny Malay Ali, delighted to be your virtual host for today. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this roundtable will be made up of 3 sessions. We have our opening session, which will include a keynote address by the Honourable Minister of Education, Brunei Darussalam, and that's followed by 2 panel discussions on the future of work and skills for a digital age. So with that, it's my pleasure to now hand over to Ms. Haslina Taib, CEO, Dynamic Technologies, and the chair of this morning's roundtable. Haslina.
Thank you, Jenny. Good afternoon. Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri Setia Awang Hamzah bin Sulaiman, Minister of Education, His Excellency Satvinder Singh, Deputy Secretary General for the ASEAN Economic Community, Haja Farida Datuk Sri Paduka Haji Talib, Managing Director and CEO of Brunei LNG, Deputy Ministers, Permanent Secretaries, Deputy Permanent Secretaries, Your Excellencies, esteemed Joint Business Council members, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. It is with great honor and privilege that I welcome you to our second virtual roundtable on skills for a digital age, as part of our series leading up to the ASEAN Business and Investment Summit, which will take place on the 25th of October next month. Before we begin, on behalf of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, I would like to take this opportunity to express my deepest gratitude to our lead partners, Brunei LNG and Bank Islam Brunei Darussalam, and to our other sponsors, Brunei Shell Petroleum, Baiduri Bank, Standard Chartered Bank, Brunei Gas Carrier, Mitsubishi, SAP Southeast Asia, the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank, and Zulik Pharma. We thank you for your continuous support in sponsoring our prestigious events. COVID-19 has presented us with great challenges in the future of work and transformed the way we work. It has accelerated a new age of digital transformation and changes in innovation. We understand changes that have taken place may threaten livelihoods and job securities of the people. When we first designed this roundtable, when we think about how it means to skilling up ASEAN against COVID-19 backdrop, we put in a lot of thoughts on the translation of the current workforce skills into the digital world. We asked, what can be automated? What can be done innovatively with the latest technology? What would we need to remain agile and stay competitive in the rapidly changing world? We recognize that as ASEAN, we have the capacity to grow together, share skills, tools, and framework, and push to be successful beyond our borders. In this digital world, as the nature of business and employment continues to evolve, our collaborative efforts and working together, sama-sama, has become even more important to the region and our respective economies. As such, in this roundtable, we hope that it will provide an understanding in the changing nature of the future of work, identify potential skills to develop, explore the different strategies for the new post-COVID working environment and the skills gap for digital ASEAN. At the beginning of the pandemic, in March 2020, Gartner's survey of 317 CFO and finance leaders estimated that 74% will move at least 5% and 25% will move at least 20% of their previously on-site workforce to permanently remote. It is important in our multicultural ASEAN community to address cultural impact of emerging skills. To do this, Cultural intelligence plays a big role in transformation, as it is one of the motivation of workers and an organization's collective identity. In this regard, it is imperative that we work with leaders in adapting and transitioning working communities into digital workspaces. The adoption of workspaces have magnified the skill gaps between generations of employees with different infrastructures, both within and across different markets. New technology advancements, such as AI, machine learning, cybersecurity, and blockchain, all present great potential for change and are some of the catalysts needed in this fourth industrial revolution. But we must ensure inclusivity. As technology advancement continuously change, staying relevant in this digital age means lifelong digital learning are even more important. With digital transformation and digital ways of working together, our world becomes borderless. Some are capable in operating from across the planet using templates, tools, and methodology. Some organizations and individuals strive to standardize and regulate, working collaboratively. ASEAN Business Council promotes business mentorships and collaboration on platforms. We share, grow together, sama-sama, in the quest of an inclusive ASEAN. As COVID-19 pandemic and restrictions to cross-border travels continue, it accelerates the need for regional reskilling, building an inclusive ecosystem to equip and upskill both ASEAN public and private sectors. This is an insight to the Brunei Legacy Project, harnessing impact with resilient employability digitally, or known as, in short, as hired. The future is not only investing in technologies, the future is investing in our people. I look forward to an insightful discussion this afternoon. Thank you very much. Back to you, Jenny.
Haslina, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, shortly we'll be inviting Haja Farida, Datuk Sri Paduka Haji Talib, the Managing Director and the CEO of Brunei LNG, for her special remarks. But before that, we do have a short video from BLNG to enjoy. With that, we now hand over to Haja Farida to deliver the special remarks on behalf of BLNG, one of our lead partners. Haja Farida.
Thank you, Jenny. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Yang Berhormat Dato' Seri Setia Awang Haji Hamzah bin Haji Sulaiman, Minister of Education of Brunei Darussalam, Your Excellencies, Yang Mulia Deputy Ministers, Yang Berhormat Siti Rozai Mariamanti, Dato' Sri Laila Jasa Rahman, Legislative Council Member and Chair of the ASEAN Brunei Business Advisory Council, Yang Mulia Haslina Taib, Chair of the ASEAN Business and Investment Roundtable on Skills for the Digital Age, Yang Mulia Haji Musa Admin, Chair of the ASEAN Business Awards, panel speakers, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A very good afternoon, salam sejahtera. I am delighted to be back in this series of ASEAN-backed events which are happening this year under the Brunei Darussalam ASEAN Chairmanship. This year's theme of building our sustainable digital future goes together with this event on the development of digital skills and the efforts that's being explored in Brunei LNG, such as data digitalization and our journey towards a more sustainable future. It is also truly an honor for me to be here today on behalf of Brunei LNG, delivering this special address virtually to all of you and especially as we are also the joint lead sponsor for the Roundtable, we see great value in supporting platforms like this. Not only does it help us to grow as a business, it also reaffirms our commitment to the nation as a key contributor in achieving Brunei Darussalam's Wawasan 2035 goals towards a dynamic and sustainable economy and smart nation. It also affirms our commitment to ASEAN as an industry leader in preparing for future opportunities and challenges and prospering together in a unified region. And last but not least, of course, it also affirms our commitment globally as an energy provider in providing sustainable energy solutions to our customers overseas. As the longest running LNG plant in the world, innovation and digitalization is and always has been a core part of our operations. It is not something we've only just started. It is something we've been consistently working and improving on throughout the years. Our investment and commitment in digitalization is to simplify our processes across the value chain, and we do so by working closely together with industry leaders. In our digitalization journey, we are progressing to create a digital twin of our existing assets, enabling an interactive workplace version for monitoring and improving our energy efficiency, for learning, for maintenance, and also emergency response. We're also investing in capabilities and tools that allows execution of technical activities in parallel with online connection of engineers and specialists from worldwide locations, enabling them to participate in repair operations virtually. So digital skills are not new and have always been important. In fact, it is nothing more than an era-appropriate term for innovative ways of working, new ways of working. And you may know that around 60% of all occupations today, currently have at least 30% of work tasks and activities that could be automated. However, it's important to note that tools and technologies such as automation are not possible without humans. Capable humans who continue to adapt, get new skills through training and credentials is what the industry needs. Digital skills without analytical skills, creative skills, and human skills will not prepare any generation, whether young or old, to interact with machines. We need the balance of all skills. That is the best way to prepare for the constant changes in our environment, combining digital technology, people, and business strategy. We need to realize that digital skills are no longer centered around just IT or those who look after IT in an organization. Rather, it has become one of those skills that is embedded across the breadth of any digital aspiring organization. Across the globe, more than 8 in 10 middle skills jobs, which is about 82%, requires digital skills, a 4% increase since 2014. So technology is changing at a rapid rate. So digital skills and capabilities will continue to grow in importance. And the best way we can prepare for these changes in skills is to be flexible and open to growth and adaptation in this space. Digital transformation is a journey and not a destination. Digitalization is a moving target that is constantly evolving and needs steady evaluation and updating to remain viable as part of a business strategy. So in the energy industry, digital is one of the 5 megatrends reshaping the industry today. So availability of technology, data, and capabilities is growing at an exponential rate. Technology has become faster and cheaper over the last 10 years. And 10 years ago, the cost of bandwidth was 40 times more expensive. The cost per megabyte of cloud infrastructure was 20 times more expensive. And the cost of processing power was actually 50 times more expensive. So technology is not only improving people's lives, but it's also making work easier and more efficient in many sectors. So there are a multitude of opportunities that have emerged as part of Brunei LNG's digital transformation journey, especially with COVID-19 and the new ways of working. It has encouraged us as an organization to think outside the box, encouraged us to use artificial intelligence to improve our reliability and maintenance predictions, and made us think of how to enable remote operations whilst enhancing productivity. And you may recall seeing in the earlier video that we are actually a 52-year-old plant, one of the longest running plants globally. So we've always had to have a very classical way of being hands-on, of being physically present to turn a valve or fix a leak. But now with COVID-19, it's more of a challenge around how can we do this remotely. So digitalization is all about the data and the people. So for us at Brunei LNG, the main opportunity with this journey is to actively invest in building this digital capability for the organization. upskilling our local Bruneians to be digitally savvy and digitally literate, creating a highly skilled workforce ready for the future of work. Digital technologies will allow VLNG to thrive through the transition to lower carbon energy, for instance, as it will help us to monitor and improve our energy efficiency. So, in summary, the key to success for any digitalization transformation journey is the human element. Investing in the human side of digitalization will ensure sustainable change and long-term value. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I look forward to hearing the different perspectives from across ASEAN and participating in today's roundtable discussions.
Farida, thank you so much. Haja Farida from BLNG. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, it's my pleasure to now welcome the Honorable Datuk Sri Setia Awang Haji Hamzah bin Haji Sulaiman for the opening keynote address. Now, the address today has been recorded. The Honorable Minister couldn't be with us in real time, but recognizing the importance of the issues, he wanted to still deliver the opening keynote and show his support for the discussions. Our Minister.
Yang berhormat, Dayang Siti Rozai Marianti Datuk Seri Laila Jasa Haji Abdul Rahman, Chair of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council 2021, Yang Mulia Dayang Haslina Haji Taib, Chair of ASEAN Business and Investment Summit 2021, Yang Mulia Awang Haji Musa Haji Adinin, Chair of ASEAN Business Awards 2021, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon from Brunei Darussalam. First of all, I would like to thank the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, the Brunei Chairs 2021, partner sponsors, as well as to everyone involved in convening this event. I'm pleased to take part in this remarkable event today in substantiating the importance of education in developing the right skills for the digital age. I hope the discussion that is to be held today will set the wheels in motion to strengthen collaborations and partnership, be it between educational institutions and business enterprises, public and private sectors, or young and old alike, with the aim of having a better understanding of the changing nature of education and the future of work. I'm also delighted to learn that ASEAN Business Advisory Council, under the Brunei Darussalam Chairmanship 2021, will be initiating a legacy project titled Harnessing Impact with Resilient Employability Digitally, or in short, HIRED, which aims to address the shift of digital technology in strengthening the capacity of workforce in ASEAN, where they will be prepared with skills that are fit for the industry working in the digital era. Ladies and gentlemen, equipping the society for a digital future relies on the development of younger generation with relevant skills and knowledge in this digital era. As technology is just the enabler, it is crucial that our society, in particular our students, are well equipped with the relevant 21st century skills, knowledge, and competency required by a digital native student. That is by focusing on the 6 C's, which are critical thinking, collaboration, communication, creativity, cultural awareness, and character education. These 6 C's serve as the foundation to enable us to respond to the needs of the 4th Industrial Revolution and Society 5.0, where the demand for technological, social, and emotional and higher connective skills will grow. As such, the 21st century skills is now becoming as important as literacy and numeracy. Development of these soft skills should start from primary and secondary schools, where agility in learning, personalization, interpersonal, and the use of education technology are crucial for students to become better innovators, creators, adapters, and independent lifelong learners. In the ASEAN Work Plan on Education 2021 to 2025, therefore, we are emphasizing on the promotion of the 21st century skills as we work towards enhancing the skills sets and competencies and knowledge of our ASEAN students. Ladies and gentlemen, with such skills expected to be taught in our school, it is therefore imperative for our educators to be trained with the right digital and 21st century pedagogical competencies for them to be able to deliver these skills and knowledge. I believe it is imperative for us to prepare our teachers to be digital ready and have the adaptability, literacy, and competency to teach 21st century skill and knowledge to our students. On this note, I'm delighted to share that under the ASEAN Plus 3 Plan of Action on Education 2018 to 2025, our Ministry of Education is currently working with South Korea on developing professional development courses for teachers on 21st century skills. This signifies our commitment towards the development of human resources at the national as well as the ASEAN level, as we believe that engagements at regional and international level could serve as a driving force for a continuous progress in human resource development. At the higher education level, a lot of efforts are being directed to prepare and provide educational programs that would be relevant and needed to prepare our students for the fourth industrial revolution era. Programs such as data analytics, artificial intelligence, robotics, and others are designed to meet the growing demand of various industries and services. This program can be for skilling, upskilling, or reskilling of our human capital in the digital era. Ladies and gentlemen, in light of the recent global crisis of COVID-19 pandemic, the use of digital technologies has now shifted tremendously, and the demand for digital skills has surged, more so in some sectors. However, this dramatic increase in innovation and adoption of digital solutions should not take place at the expense of ethical considerations. With the ongoing moral and public debates evolving the use of technologies such as artificial intelligence and data analytics in our daily activities, matters such as liability, accountability, privacy, property, autonomy, amongst which conveys adverse insinuation such as on automatic data collection, algorithms used for predicting and profiling, technologies used for surveillance has become a major public concern. Therefore, with this in mind, a holistic approach should be taken to ensure the right ethical and moral principles are instilled to our students at all levels of education. In a time where we are less clear about the specific skills tomorrow's worker will require, digital ethics and values become our guiding principle in order to develop and implement digital technologies in a responsible manner. In the context of Brunei Darussalam, these values and principles are embedded in our Malay Islamic monarchy philosophy. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope what I have shared here would serve as a foundation for participants to further deliberate during this afternoon session. I believe with strong commitment and enhanced collaboration among various stakeholders, we can strive together to achieve better towards preparing and providing relevant skills, knowledge, and competencies for the society in our quest for prosperity and sustainability in a digital era. Finally, I wish to congratulate ASEAN Business Advisory Council, Brunei, in spearheading this important event and express our appreciation for having us to be a part of this important affair. The Ministry of Education of Brunei Darussalam hopes to further strengthen our alliances and welcomes potential cooperation that will mutually benefit all parties in building resilient and sustainable future for ASEAN and work in this digital era. Thank you, stay safe, and take care.
Much to our Honorable Minister of Education, Brunei Darussalam. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we now call upon the Honorable Yanti Rahman, the chair of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, to now launch Brunei's legacy project, Hired.
Thank you so much, Jenny, and a very good afternoon and salam sejahtera to all. Honorable Datuk Seri Setia Haji Hamzah bin Haji Sulaiman, Minister of Education of Brunei Darussalam, Haslina Taib, Chair of ASEAN Business Investment Summit, Musa Adnin, Chair of ASEAN Business Awards, Haja Faridah Datuk Seri Paduka Haji Talib, Managing Director and CEO Brunei LNG, our lead partner. His Excellency Satvinder Singh, Deputy Secretary for the ASEAN Economic Community, Mark Garnier, MP, Prime Minister's Trade Envoy to Brunei, Myanmar and Thailand. It's definitely good to see everyone again. Excellencies, Deputy Ministers, leaders of businesses in ASEAN and beyond, academia, trainers, employers, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Before I begin, we are incredibly grateful to have Honorable Datuk Haji Hamzah, Brunei Minister of Education, present virtually with us here today, and we would like to express our sincerest appreciation for his support and encouragement in taking part of today's roundtable and delivering the keynote address. We would also like to express our gratitude to Haja Farida, the MD and CEO of BLNG, our lead partner in sharing her remarks earlier, and not forgetting the government officials, leaders of businesses, and our respective panelists, moderators. Thank you for your valuable time to be here with us today. Digital transformation has always been at the forefront of the agenda, even before the current pandemic. However, COVID-19 has speeded up the adoption of digital technologies, and many of these changes could be here for the long haul. It can support us to emerge stronger towards the post-pandemic recovery, but only if we are prepared. Technology and continuously advanced and rapidly changing the landscape of work in the region and leaving us with no choice but to upskill and reskill in order to adapt and accommodate the changes in the industry skills requirements. And in a nutshell, this is what ASEAN-backed Brunei Legacy Project is all about. We named this legacy project Hired, H-I-R-E-D, means harnessing impact with resilient employability digitally. Hired was built upon to address the issue of unemployment and also on ASEAN facing that it lags behind in the reskilling and upskilling of its workforce. This has become even more so critical and timely now to the impact of pandemic as we hope to achieve the United Nations SDGs, particularly on goal number 4 on quality education and goal number 8 on decent work and economic growth. This legacy project is also guided by the third pillar of the ASEAN Economic Community on equitable economic development and ASEAN-backed report on 2 to 5 recommendations of a pathway towards recovery framework and hope in ASEAN, in support of the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework, which upskilling and reskilling is reflected under the second broad strategy on strengthening human security and also aligning with the Brunei Chairmanship priority economic deliverables under the second strategic trust on digitalization. At the end of the day, what truly matters is the purpose of what we are doing for this project is that we are able to provide opportunities for the needs of the people, not just in Brunei, but also in the ASEAN region to gain the relevant skills that they fail to receive in reaching to their full potential productivity to become employable and relevant to today's industry. Upskilling and reskilling are not just looking towards the graduate youth, but also the existing workforce, where the older employees today struggling and faces greater job insecurity, which require them to upskill and reskill to adapt to this technology-driven world of work. As Brunei aspires towards an educated, highly skilled and accomplished nation, obtaining skills development through training is an essential component. And this is just as important to education, which was highlighted earlier by Honorable Datuk Hamzah. And in the long term, institutions may have to revisit the existing education system and enhance with incorporating skills to gain practical experiences in ensuring a future-ready workforce. Now, it has truly been a remarkable journey, and it is with honor that I stand here today at this momentous milestone of Hired, along with the team consisting of our knowledge partners and collaborators that made this happen. I still can't believe it has been almost a year that we have embarked this journey from seeing this project at its infant stage, then undertook information campaign through various engagements with our business councils, joint business councils, and knowledge partners to raise awareness of Hired and officially taking off today. So without further ado, please join me in officially launching Hired. Thank you.
The fourth industrial revolution has ushered in an era of sophisticated technology, innovation, and ideation meant to truly revolutionize the future. ASEAN should be a part of this revolution. According to the World Bank, a child born in ASEAN today will only achieve 59% of their full potential productivity, partly due to the lack of relevant skills that they fail to receive. COVID-19 has caused more than 30 million people in ASEAN to become unemployed. The pandemic has accelerated the need to be digitally literate and resilient, as the future of work requires specific skill sets, aligned with the digital transformation the world is seeing now. We need to address the skill gaps in the ASEAN region and encourage the available workforce to embrace digitalization. Hired, an ASEAN-backed Brunei's legacy project, understands the importance of investing in reskilling and upskilling the workforce to adapt to a modern, technology-driven world. Hired aims to provide online training and mentorship to the young, unemployed, and current workforce of ASEAN by harnessing existing initiatives and partnerships to support access to digital skills, collaborating with employers and organizations on training and mentorship to enhance employability and strengthen ASEAN workforce. The key to a stronger human capital in ASEAN is by staying relevant and providing opportunities to mentor and train the people to achieve their fullest potential. Hired provides ASEAN workforce with quality work opportunities accessed remotely, promoting doing business across ASEAN and beyond.
This legacy project is critical to ASEAN's sustainable future. Thus, we shall rope the strength of our businesses, knowledge partners, key industry champions, trainers, employers, and institutions as ASEAN One Community. And we are indeed the ASEAN legacy. So join us. Together, we can collectively recover stronger and build a resilient workforce for a sustainable ASEAN digital future. Sama-sama.
Thank you so much, Honorable Yanti. Hired is now officially launched. Ladies and gentlemen, as we now transition to our next session and bring our speakers onto our virtual stage, we do have a short message, once again from our primary lead partners, BLNG, followed by Baiduri Bank, one of our platinum sponsors.
What does the future hold? Wherever you look, from whichever walk of life, we know there is great potential within, just waiting to be unlocked. For every milestone in your life, no matter how big or small, Baiduri is with you, enriching your life at every stage. For every business ambition, no dream is too big and no challenge is too great. Baiduri is with your business, empowering success every step of the way with our global outlook and deep local insights. As your financial partner, we believe in truly understanding your needs. We engage through meaningful experiences with you in mind as we build lifelong relationships. This is what co-creation means to us. Enriching, empowering, and engaging the communities we serve for over 2 decades. Together, our journey continues as we evolve, turning dreams into reality, uncovering new possibilities in a changing world. This is who we are. Baiduri Bank, co-creating your future.
Let's now move straight into our very first panel discussion on the future of work. Now, this session begins with a keynote address by His Excellency Satvinder Singh, the Deputy Secretary General for the ASEAN Economic Community, followed by a panel discussion. So we can get questions and comments ready as we go along and post them in the Q&A box for our panel to respond to. So for this first session, I'd like to now hand over to our moderator. A warm welcome to Mr. Stephen Okun, Senior Advisor, McClarty Associates in Singapore, who will be introducing our speakers for the session and leading us through the discussion. Stephen, welcome.
Jenny, thank you so much. Thanks for organizing such a great and timely topic. You know, when we talk about the future of work, there's so many questions that we have as businesses, especially with a focus in Southeast Asia. What does the future of work even look like here? How is innovation and business transformation going to change how employees operate? What are some of the permanent changes that are coming to the workplace after COVID-19? You know, the World Economic Forum just came out with a study that shows upward of 40% of workers are considering quitting their jobs in what is now being routinely called the Great Resignation. Many of them just don't want to change jobs, they want to change industry. So there's so much that businesses are going to have to grapple with, and there's so much that governments want to grapple with. And that's why we are so fortunate, not just for this panel and at this event, but to have somebody like His Excellency Satvinder Singh in ASEAN is the Deputy Secretary General, because Satvinder truly knows where the intersection of the business community is with government, where politics and business intersect. He was an extraordinarily effective a public official here in Singapore as the Assistant Chief Executive Officer for Trade Connectivity at Enterprise Singapore. Instrumental in strengthening Singapore as a business and regional hub, and also how to do that not only pre-pandemic, but during the pandemic as well. So, Your Excellency, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for your past leadership. Thank you for your future leadership, and we look forward to your keynote.
Thank you, Steve. I also would like to have a very good afternoon to my fellow panelists and yourself. And of course, I would also like to acknowledge His Excellency Hamzah Sulaiman, the Minister of Education, and also Her Excellency YB Yanti, who has spoken before this. Again, like I said, it's first of all, I would really like to congratulate the ASEAN-backed Brunei Darussalam for convening this wonderful event and bringing all of us, the speakers and participants, together. As you know, this is a timely topic and very, very meaningful to have a discussion like this. And also, of course, a big congratulations on the launch of the Hyatt program, which all of us have been looking forward to it for so much. Over the last 1 year and a half, I think all of us know that we have been navigating truly and very uncertain outlook with the COVID-19 pandemic. And actually, we have seen our economies contracting. In fact, we contracted in 2019 by 3.3% last year. It's really a very sharp decline from the increase we had a year before in 2019, which was 4.5% growth. But nevertheless, I'm pleased to share that the ASEAN region as a whole still remains resilient, as all the leaders in the ASEAN member countries, they all are pushing ahead. They are pushing ahead forward with the vaccination efforts in the region, and they are all vowing to keep our economies open and continue to want to remain connected to the rest of the world and the region. In fact, recent data that I've seen on vaccinations in some of the major capitals of the ASEAN cities show that most of them are reaching vaccination rates of above 65 to 80%. I think with this kind of committed effort across the whole of the region, I do suspect that come in 2021, this year, we are finally going to see the entire region growing positively. In fact, ADB has projected a growth of about 3.1% and even a stronger growth next year for the region for 5.2%. In fact, in the space of digitalization, I would also like to pay attention to some of the work and reports that have been done by Facebook and Bain, and where they have also acknowledged that nearly 70 million new internet users have been added in the ASEAN, making ASEAN one of the global largest internet base of close to about 400 million internet users. I feel that this digital adaptation, again, is expected to truly not only come because of the pandemic. I think this is really here to stay, and it will really have a long-lasting effect to the entire community. In fact, Google and Bain, they have actually estimated that the size of the ASEAN internet economy, which actually stood at around 100 billion in 2019, is going to grow by close to about 300 billion US dollars by 2025. Therefore, I feel that it's not a surprise that, despite all the challenging circumstances of the pandemic, I believe that our digital journey transformation is to some extent on its way and is truly gaining good momentum. While our economies are beginning to recover, I think one thing will remain, that the digitalization itself has really altered the way we live, work, and play. And while technology advancements like Internet of Things, we are talking about the artificial intelligence, robotics, data analytics, all of these are altering the kind of the traditional business models and even some of the employment arrangements. In fact, the ADB ASEAN Economic Integration Report, they mentioned that with the increase of digital technology adoption, there will be creation of millions of new jobs in Asia and the Pacific. But at the same time, there is also a fear that this same technology advancements and some of the new jobs are going to take away more of the other existing jobs. I think today the demand for technology jobs is rising almost double digit in every ASEAN capital. However, we are finding truly deep tightness for relevant skilled talent to take these jobs. The situation is not just inflicting the MNCs, it's also inflicting especially the SMEs and even the startups. They're all chasing after this same talent. And obviously, causing a cost of hiring for such talent today is no longer what it used to be. It's almost coming to a level of unsustainable levels for especially the SMEs. The other consequence is, of course, the changing nature of the employment relationships brought about by digital transformation. What we are seeing, there's almost like a new phase to the informal economy, as well as the emergence of what I call the gig startup economy in the region. These new forms of work, they are all propelled by the growth of what I call the platform workers, who are now basically the critical backbone that provide essential services that again allow businesses and the entire supply chain continue during the COVID disruption. But at the same time, I think what we are seeing is companies are beginning to turn to freelancers or even temporary contract workers during this period for short-term assignments. All this results in concerns over job security, stability, access to social security benefits. In fact, there was a study by Oxford Economics and Cisco on forecasting of ASEAN jobs disruption. And this is the period of 2018 to 2028, a 10-year period. And what they are projecting is close to about 10 to 20% of displacement, especially of the mid-career jobs, will be disrupted by technology. In fact, this definitely serves as a reminder of the importance for us to constantly need to upgrade and diversify. And of course, as we have heard from the previous speakers, the reskilling into the relevant skills desired by the changing circumstances. I think it's very important that we need to ensure that our youth, our working population, is adequately prepared and resilient to the future disruption. In fact, I must say the Secretariat, we are very inspired by the efforts of the Brunei ABEC Hyatt Program Initiative, which again aims to bridge the skills mismatch gap and aims at skilling young job seekers to embrace digital readiness practical skills that will support their employability. The Secretariat will definitely want to work with Hyatt Initiative and will work with Brunei to expand this whole initiative across the ASEAN, and also what we like to do also to make it a little bit more inclusive, not just to target the young, but also to target the white collar older employees who are today some of the key decision makers in many of the SMEs in the region. I think we need to reskill some of these individuals and employees in preparing them, in kind of reskilling them with the necessary, what I call the digital readiness skills that really help them to continue to be relevant to their organizations and also be part of this whole digital journey. Again, they will be in a position to pull the members of their corporation also as they themselves get familiar and comfortable with such skills. To me, some of these programs that we're going to work on, they will focus on digital readiness skills, and many of these skills are actually quite fungible across sectors, whether it's finance, ICT, manufacturing, whole scale, or public sector. I think we have ability to build, curate a program that will be able to bring some of these targeted white collar professionals together. Obviously, it has to be on an online basis, and also reskill them and help them, empower them in order to help them for them to be relevant again and for them to pull their companies towards the transformation journey. I would also like to share that during the recent 53rd ASEAN Economic Ministers meeting, we also shared the same concept in the document. It's called the Bandar Sri Begawan Roadmap, which again highlights very keenly the need for ASEAN to map out the business models that will incorporate digital reskilling and upskilling of workers with the objective of promoting such business models and helping businesses to adapt to the new reality. So to me, overall, ASEAN has taken very active steps. And I think we are going to pay a lot of attention in adoption of some of these human development, human capital development areas. In fact, there was the adoption of the ASEAN Declaration of Human Resources Development for the Changing World of Work, which is an initiative that actually helps us to reflect at our steadfast commitment to equip the workforce in ASEAN with competence that will enable them to be relevant and resilient. In fact, this roadmap looks at a number of actions that need to be into place. One, of course, it looks at the culture of lifelong learning to be embedded. Second, it looks into the improvement and the inclusiveness of education and employment. Third, it looks into investments into skills development. And lastly, also it looks into very keenly into the inclusiveness of human resource policies. I do hope that I do hope that that as part of our journey that we're going to achieve all this is not really centered only on governments. I think the private sector definitely would have to play a very significant role in contributing to all of these priorities. And I would really like to encourage the private sector to kind of continue to work with us, co-invest with us in some of these skills development initiatives. And in fact, one good example that I can really highlight the work that private sector has come forward to step up to help ASEAN is really in the area of the ASEAN TVET Council. In fact, this is for technical vocation, the development of the TVET education in the region. This is where we have seen intersectoral body consisting of both the private sector, the academia, and also the institutions, the regional institutions come together, and they are working with the Confederation of Employees, the Future Workforce Council, the trade unions. They all are sitting down in order to work out on the program that will hopefully be more relevant in improving the technical vocational skills of our workforce. In fact, it is things like this kind of a multi-stakeholder kind of platforms that's really going to help us to overcome all the challenges that's ahead of us. I think in closing, again, I would like to thank Brunei Darussalam for bringing us all together and truly look forward to participating in the conversations in a while, Steve. Can I hand it back to you? Thank you again.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And and what underscores or is going to make even those challenges greater, that you talk about is that ASEAN just gets to be more and more an attractive place to do business. You know, coming out of the pandemic, coming out of the trade tensions that we see globally, businesses need to diversify their supply chains and make them more resilient. And so that makes ASEAN a more attractive place. There are going to be 125 million people just in Vietnam, Indonesia, and the Philippines combined who are going to come into the middle class over the next decade. So you have such an immensely growing market. You have companies that want to set up here, want to do business here. And it's really, in a way, the human talents in the driver's seat now, not the employers, but the employees. And so how is all of this going to adapt? And so we have four great panelists to bring into the discussion now. And they come at it from different sectors. So we're going to hear from the energy sector. We're going to hear from the financial services sector, the human capital sector, and the ITC sector as they talk about all of these challenges and opportunities from their perspective. So first up, as we welcome the four panelists, I'm not going to introduce them one by one. I'm going to let them introduce themselves as we go in order. So Elizabeth, why don't you go first? Talk about, from your point of view, the situation that COVID has brought to you in the past year, how it's changed, how you're going to look at business going forward, what the future collaboration is like, and what does the concept of equity and inclusivity mean in the energy sector? A lot to talk about in 4 or 5 minutes.
And you've given me 5 minutes. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Your Excellency. Fantastic opening remarks. And I should say some of the numbers you quoted are absolutely fascinating, be it from ADB and others. Greetings to esteemed panelists and a warm welcome to all participants in the roundtable. I'm Elizabeth Santana Kumar. I head transformation for Brunei LNG. I have about 20 years of experience across industries and regions, leading change management and organizational development to improve business and business performance. It is an honor to represent Brunei LNG in this forum, and I would be talking about digitalization and how energy transition and digitalization is Brunei LNG's ambition to an energy sustainable future. We believe that digitalization will enable billions in incremental value creation over the coming years. Our philosophy is to unlock value from data and to rejuvenate our business and build an asset of the future. Haslina Taib made a mention of it. She said it's not about tools and technologies, but it's about people. Therefore, our philosophy is around 60, 30, 10. 60% efforts we spend in data, 30% towards people, capabilities, and ways of working, and 10% into tools and technologies. So what do we mean by 60% efforts in data? It means we ensure data quality through a robust data governance. Just a fun fact, the world creates 2,500 petabytes of data every day. And to put this into perspective, 50 petabytes is enough to store all the books written in the world. So what does that mean for our energy industry and for Brunei LNG, especially Brunei LNG? We have 52 years of rich golden knowledge, historical data, collection of this big data to capture the corporate memory on specialized technical skills such as how to troubleshoot the plant performance, even during a COVID scenario where most of our technologists are working from home. We utilize this big data via our proactive monitoring hub. It helps us to manage our maintenance and improve the performance, resolve performance issues, and transition to a low carbon footprint in a structured way. Our MD, Farida Talib, mentioned about this in her address. At BLNG, we aspire to promote transfer of knowledge. So we're talking about this divide because of gender or because of age primarily. This corporate memory our senior experienced staff have, and we want to make that corporate memory and transfer of knowledge more transparent and sustainable. This is very essential to address the growing gap between younger and older generation, but also for the larger upskilling and reskilling of different technologies that we've been talking about. We also want to make this mind shift change of utilizing data not to know, but to know how this information can be used. Most of the time, data was looked for, do I know this data and how do I use it? But we're talking about historical data and how to be able to find it and make use of it through analytics and artificial intelligence. To quote Petro LMI, they forecasted that the increased demand for data processing skills is pivotal to collect data, to clean data, and to eliminate inaccuracies. So that when we code the data, it ensures compatibility with data analytics and artificial intelligence applications, which is why 30% people and ways of working is important. We look at building capabilities within our organization across all levels internally, including our business partners. And external to our organization is to building our capability funnel and delivering our societal responsibility, be it through hired or through other initiatives in the ASEAN region and in Brunei. So according to me, if you ask me honestly, there is no place for divide while building capabilities. We need all techs on hands, irrespective of age, experience, and even employment status, whether they are in the economy or freelancers. We need all of them to be building capabilities so that the digital ways of working are retained and continuously improved. Internal upskilling is very core to for our business transformation. We cannot pick up a tool or a technology and the tool and technology dies off in 2 years or 3 years because our staff and business partners haven't found a use to it. So 10%, the last one, is tools and technologies. In the energy industry, we use artificial intelligence, machine vision, chatbots, digital realities, Internet of Things, sensors, 3D printing, blockchain, robotics, etc. And all of this, or some of this, we use to create a digital twin, an asset of the future. So employees are core. Employees will digitally enable Brunei LNG and many other energy sectors across the globe to combine human ingenuity, experience, and technology to deliver sustainable outcomes. I would also like to challenge the assumption that the role of humans will be reduced. In fact, I believe technology will cover a growing number of practical functions. Optimum human machine interactivity is very crucial. At least in our area, I can say a machine alone is of no use to us, a data alone is of no use to us unless the human is able to apply to problems solve and improve our performance. Skilled technicians will today Skilled technicians today will become the digital twin engineers of tomorrow, or they'll become the robot teaming coordination, for example. They will be needed to integrate technology with wider business via analysis, training, improving commercial acumen, customer interactions and experiences, and the other functions. Lastly, COVID has created opportunities, working from home, working on site with a lot of SOPs and so on. In this digital age and digitalization, I feel there is more opportunities for women and women in the energy industry. Look at this panel. We have two women talking about digitalization. It's an example of how there is going to be an increased equal representation of genders in the future of work during the digital age and transformation. Thank you. With that, I'd like to pass it back to you, Steve.
Thank you. I think a machine alone is of no use would be a good topic for this panel. We could have renamed it. So we'll save that for the next time. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And Manuel, over to you to introduce yourself, your firm, and talk about financial services.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, distinguished guests, panelists, attendees. I'm happy to be here with you today. My name is Manuel. I'm originally from Belgium, and I'm currently working for Baiduri Bank in Brunei. I've worked for the last 20 years in financial institutions in various countries and in various roles. And I believe that this allows me to have a different kind of perspective on remote working and what are maybe some of the challenges that we can find in some countries and not in others. And I would like to share those views with the panel here and the guests. But before I go there, I would just like to share an online poll that Baiduri Bank conducted last week, where we got around 1,000 people responding to some questions about remote working. And as probably not a surprise, 54% of the respondents preferred to be working from home rather than the office. And 41% felt that they actually they're well equipped to work at home. Some of the benefits that they highlighted is spending more time with their families, not longer having to commute, pay petrol to go to one place to another, shorter time to get ready. I guess that some people, don't have to do that much to get ready in the morning, and they enjoy the flexible hours. Now, in terms of the disadvantage or the challenges was, how do you find the right balance between your home chores and work and your actual work? Because not everybody has a dedicated space. Not everybody has help to assist with the children, which I think is one of the key differences of this pandemic, because this pandemic, children didn't go to school. So it was an additional pain point for parents that needed to work from home that hopefully we won't see in the future. And then depending on the countries, you might have connectivity issues. Not everywhere you have a fast, cheap internet. And that could also be an obstacle to be able to work from home. So that's just some insights of what we learned from that poll. But when it comes to my experience to remote work, because I will be focusing on remote working, there's three things that I think are key. The first one is how far you are in your digitalization journey. Because if you are still relying on paper-based documents, it's going to be very difficult for you to implement remote working. And when the pandemic struck here in Baiduri Bank, we quickly went into a process where we looked at all the different processes that we had and which were the ones that required human interactions and how could we move them to an online model. So for example, last year we implemented the Amy AI chatbot to allow our customers to interact on our webpage. We're introducing digital signatures to be able to sign documents with our customers, because that's still very important in the financial world. Wet signature has not always disappeared. So we try to replace them with digital signatures. We're allowing customers to apply to our products digitally via our website, via emails, and then only meeting with them when it is absolutely required, because again, we do have KYC face-to-face requirements in terms of verifying who is the customer. We've worked on empowering our staff by, most of them have been provided by laptops. So we've moved completely from desktop to laptops to just allow them to work remotely. We are fully embracing the cloud. I'm sorry for Google, but it's more Microsoft, but I'm sure it will change over time. But at the moment, it's more Microsoft. We're implementing the virtual desktop technology to allow our staff to access our core system remotely in a secured manner, because again, as a bank, everything has to be secured. We're talking about, customer data, people's money, and we want to make sure we do things correctly. So that's one of the aspects of it. The second one, and I think people have touched about it, is the digital readiness of the employees. Banking, we're not a digital native companies, right? We are slowly moving towards it, but I think that not all of the employees has the same sensibility or knowledge when it comes to technology. So we've had to spend some time and some training to our employees to ensure that they know how to use these new tools that we are providing. We are providing online training, again, cloud-based online training, so people can develop new skill sets and look at what are the things that they think they should improve on. So I think that's a key point. And then when we talk about employees, we cannot forget about our customers. Since the pandemic has started, we have seen a reduction of around 42% in the volume of transaction happening in our branches. And we've seen 40% more people signing up to our mobile application to do their transaction. And I think that's phenomenal. I think it's great, but it's not enough. And, we think 42%, quite a large number, but it means we still have a lot of people not using those digital channels that we are providing to them. And when we talk to them, because we go and we try to move them, to ATMs, to online, to the call center, in some part of the world, there's still a lot of faith being put in checks, being put in cash, and people like to get receipt. They like to know immediately that their money is on the account. So there's still a lot of education required to be able to move those people from doing the transaction over the counter, coming to a branch, risking to be infected in these days, because the risk is not, we've put in all the safeguards that you can imagine in terms of screening, temperature, but the risk is not zero. The risk still exists. So at the end of the day, those are all the things that companies have to take into account. It's not that straightforward. I think clearly remote work is here to stay. I think at a minimum, organization will have to provide flexibilities to employees in terms of the working hours that the employees will want to do. And then I strongly believe that depending on the work that the person is doing and the skill set that you are looking for, you might need to be more aggressive. And for example, say, okay, we allow you to work remotely 100% because that is what is expected in that field. And if you're not competing, you're not getting the talent. So, in the bank, we are working on developing our process, our procedures, because we want to make sure that everybody feels included. We talked about equity. It's true, when you say out of sight, out of mind, sometimes. So how do you ensure that those people still get considered for promotions, that are still recognized for the work that they do? And, the jury is still out there on the efficiency of remote working. Recent studies tend to say that collaboration innovation is impacted by remote working. Microsoft just did a study on 60,000 of their employees, and they do note productivity gains, but innovation, can be impacted by that. So again, is how do we bridge that divide, and how do we ensure that even through a conference, webcam, remotely, we still engage in those meaningful conversations that allows us to innovate and collaborate. So those were some of the points I wanted to make.
I don't know if this is maybe a good story or a bad story, but I went to go to the bank yesterday to get out a little bit of money, and I realized I had lost my ATM card because it's been months since I needed to use cash because we're so cashless now. And so that's clearly the way that we are heading, certainly in Singapore, and I'm sure throughout Southeast Asia, we're going to fast get there. And that's going to bring a lot of challenges and opportunities. Before I bring on Anthony, just for people in the audience, if anyone has any questions, place them in the comment section, and we will get those addressed when we get to the comment side. Well, Anthony, I'm sure you have heard a lot on all the challenges on human capital from the energy sector, financial services sector, government sector. So we'd love to get your perspective. Oh, you're on mute, Anthony.
There we go. You would have thought by now, with the number of calls, that I would have worked that one out. So great to be here. What a massive topic, and almost so big it's difficult to work out where to start. There's been a number of really good points made so far. For those not familiar with Page Group, we are a UK listed recruitment company. I sit on our global board and have responsibility for the Asia Pacific region, which is around about 1,600 or so people in 27 offices. I've worked in the region with Page for now well over 20 years, which makes me have some interesting thoughts on digitalization. When I first started working in recruitment, the process was you would put an advertisement in a newspaper on a Saturday, wait until Tuesday or Wednesday when you get your letter opener out, and start reading very, very long CVs. And you think of how things have changed in that 20 or so year period, which is both a long and a short time, I guess, depending on how you look at it. But I imagine we're going to see enormous changes in the next 2 decades. As an organisation, we interact with literally thousands and thousands of companies and tens of thousands of candidates every year. So we do get to have the opportunity to see such a broad cross-section of organisations, sectors, countries, cultures, and so on. And I suppose we're a bit of a barometer in terms of economic activity. And I was really interested to hear what some of the other speakers have had to say. In fact, nearly all have emphasised this point. We we find ourselves in a real war for talent. I approached this year with the view that it was going to be a more positive year than 2020, but I didn't anticipate quite the level of activity from a recruitment perspective that we've seen. And as we're almost 3/4 of the way through 2021, this is comfortably the strongest or hottest recruitment market I've seen in my nearly quarter of a century working in recruitment, which seems a little bit counterintuitive when you consider the number of markets, particularly in ASEAN, that are still really heavily impacted by COVID and the associated restrictions. But what we've seen, which I never really had anticipated until the last year or two, is that COVID, I think, has accelerated the direction that we were moving in any event in terms of the future of work or the, I guess, the digital age. We've seen more and more companies make recruitment decisions and run whole recruitment processes without ever meeting anyone face to face, even for some really senior level appointments. What that's also seen is recruitment processes be faster as organizations become more comfortable and confident in using technology, particularly video technology, to facilitate the recruitment process. So I think it's interesting that we're talking about digital, we're talking about technology and advancement in innovation and so on, but there's still a massive investment in human capital, and that is not dissipating at all, despite the technological advances that we're seeing. So I really do echo the sentiments that others have mentioned. A particular topic is one that's raised with me all the time. I'm constantly asked about the future of work, and particularly workplace flexibility. So often with clients or even with my leaders internally, I'll be asked about, what is workplace flexibility? What are the rules? Are there rules? What does it all mean? And certainly what I've found is there is no real answer to that question. There is no one size fits all. If I think about just within my own organization, I have a lot of people that want to be back in the office 100% of the time. I have a lot of people that don't want to be in the office more than 1 or 2 days a week. I have very few, based on the surveys that we've done internally and externally, that don't ever want to come into an office. But almost without exception, what people want is choice, and the choice of when to work. And that might not always be how many days a week, but what hours am I working during the day? So to me, it comes down to choice almost more than flexibility, if that's the perhaps the word that we're going to use. And one topic that I think that leads to is leadership, how to lead in the future of work, how to lead in the digital age, because I think it's harder. It's more complicated, it's more challenging. It's easier to lead a group of people when everyone has to follow the same set of rules, when everyone is doing the same thing. But what candidates are now looking for, and I expect this will just grow in the future, is almost a bespoke environment that suits them. And they want to have that opportunity to choose, as I mentioned. And gone are the days of attracting and retaining people purely by remuneration or potentially job title. It's much, much bigger than that. We see talented candidates very focused on what level of commitment a company has towards leading edge technology. What is the focus on all of the aspects of ESG, from diversity and inclusion through to CSR, sustainability, and the list goes on. There's a real demand for leaders to have great levels of empathy, humanity, be able to create an environment that's both psychologically and physically safe. So I think what we're going to find is there's going to be a real need to upskill in lots of areas, but there's going to be a need to upskill constantly in terms of leadership. And I think, as we've all touched on, leading in the digital age is not necessarily just about technology, it's about people and how we can best get that to work. So for me, it's it's a really interesting topic. Just how are we all going to lead effectively and successfully in the digital age, or the future of work?
Anthony, thank you so much. And so next up, and to use an American phrase, to that cleanup, you can't have anybody better in the world than Google when it comes to being on a panel for the digital age. And then, Mr. Secretary General, after Ruma goes, we'd love to get your thoughts, if you have any you want to share on what you've heard from, the 4 panelists from the 4 very different sectors. And then we already have some questions in the queue, so I'll move to the question. So Ruma, you're next, and then Mr. Secretary General, you after that.
Thank you so much, Steve, and thank you, Deputy Secretary General, and it is fantastic to be on this esteemed panel. I have to say that Google has been in a space that many of you have been in as well. I am the managing director for Google across Southeast Asia, and I've been in this region now for 15 years. And I've seen so many of the changes that you all have talked about. And these changes have been absolutely accelerating over the last 18 months as we've all been in this really sort of interesting state of the business as well as our own personal lives. Now, a lot of the pieces around Google have been around experimentation and transformation. And you don't necessarily think about that when you think about a traditionally sort of digital native type of company. But, I have to say that many of the things that we've seen are very similar to what you all have seen in your own businesses. And a lot of the remote work experimentation was around the fact that so many of our customers put millions and millions of people into this remote work from home situation literally overnight. I remember working with one customer who put about 450,000 employees into a video situation in the course of 72 hours. Now, if you think about the kind of impact that has on certainly the culture of an organization, how you deal with this again in your own personal lives, but then also the technology infrastructure. And how does that technology infrastructure actually accommodate moving hundreds of thousands of people into a situation where all of your data has to be kept securely and individuals have to collaborate on a regular basis? And so there are a few themes that we saw emerging over the last 18 months. First and foremost, work was not necessarily a place anymore. Work is literally the device that you're on, and that device could be a laptop, a desktop, perhaps even a phone as you're walking through the park, in between calls. And aligned to what many of our panelists are saying, we've seen studies where more than 90% of organizations are saying that, even as workplaces open post-pandemic, they are going to allow employees to have that flexibility because employees are really demanding it. And we're actually seeing that from our own workforce. Interestingly, we do an annual employee survey called Google Geist. And it's an amazing data set because ever since Google was founded, we've been doing this employee survey. So it's a longitudinal data set that spans decades. And, we added some questions about remote work from home. And we basically found results very similar to what some of my other panelists were talking about, that really our employees prefer that flexibility to have, at least 2 or 3 days to be able to work from home. So this has really spawned a sense of experimentation about how we bring people back to work and what defines work. The second thing is that time is becoming more precious than ever. Interestingly, in our own studies that we've seen with our employees, we've seen that the average working day has increased by 48 minutes. Now, that may not seem like a lot, but when you're thinking about being in front of a screen of any sort for literally hours and hours in a day, and essentially that time frame increases by 48 minutes, that's a pretty profound impact. That's a pretty profound increase. And so what does that mean? It means that a lot of organizations, as they've seen this, tremendous pressure on their technology and infrastructure, they've had to go out and test new kinds of IT solutions, or perhaps adapt existing solutions. And to be honest, a lot of the companies that we work with have really struggled. They've discovered that their tools weren't scalable. Perhaps they had more cyber attacks than they imagined that they would, originally. And by the way, many of those tools weren't really intuitive, so employees weren't able to use them in a way that was easy and didn't require a lot of help from their IT help desks. So, we really have seen that this idea of time being more precious than ever has really put a pressure on technology infrastructure across many organizations. And finally, this is a bit of an obvious point, but I'll tell you, I've, for the last 3 days now, been in quarantine in Singapore. And I'll tell you that this is definitely true, and that is that human connection is crucial. Okay. So I've gone now, this is my 3rd day without actually seeing someone, in person. And, this point around this idea of human connection is absolutely essential. What Anthony talked about in terms of leadership, we think about leadership first and foremost as that human connection. It's really hard to have when you're in a virtual world. And so a lot of the work that we're doing is around helping companies bridge that gap between the virtual world and that human world. So I'll leave perhaps a couple of thought starters for the rest of the discussion. The first is that collaboration equity is really, really crucial, because if you think about this idea of equitability in terms of the ability to collaborate across different countries, the ability to collaborate across different kinds of devices, that's going to be really critical as we think about this hybrid work environment and the future of work. And then the second piece is that the future of industries is actually going to be significantly impacted as a result of the last 18 months. Again, very much an obvious statement. If you think about what our panelists have said, they've really made this come to life. But I will tell you that I'm seeing it across every single industry, whether it be healthcare, telecommunications, certainly financial services, energy. These are all industries that are absolutely transforming as we think about moving more and more to digital. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Deputy Secretary General.
Thank you, Steve, for letting me to sort of have a take on everyone's presentation. First of all, of course, brilliant sharing by all of you. I think the examples and the in-depth sharing that each of you has given from your each sectoral challenges and what you potentially see coming forward and the journey that you guys have been through, I think it's been very rich sharing, and I appreciate that. You can imagine what big businesses like yourselves are enduring. You can imagine how this is so extremely even more challenging for the SMEs on the ground. And I think this is where I think rather than saying that I'm being helpless, I think this is the time where also it's important for the SMEs and for even sectoral associations of various sectors to come together to see how the entire value chain, whether you are on the buying side or the selling side, how more can be done in terms of helping the whole value chain to be further digitalized, and then at the same time making the entire work value to be more efficiently conducted. And I do see such activities being done in some countries already, where I'm beginning to see the trade associations working with technology companies coming together, including startups, coming together to build up market exchanges, then allow a greater sharing of more transparent information, basic service ability for an individual, a one-two-man distributor company to be able to then upload and be able to track all their inventory in a much more effective way, rather than doing all offline without digital support. It all used to be on paper. Imagine managing 6,000, 7,000 lines of components. So I'm beginning to see such actions being done. I'm even beginning to see in marketplaces, in a typical, most traditional marketplace, which is the fish market, I'm beginning to see auctions being done online. So I do see there is a momentum beginning to happen where the SMEs are also beginning to help themselves, but naturally not alone, but coming together and committing towards building solutions. So I think that's a great step ahead. But I really got worried when Anthony talked about how recruitment is really booming. So again, it kind of stems back that one of the greatest issue is going to be the competition for the capital, the human capital needed for transformation. And I can imagine the bigger companies are going to be in a better place to be able to attract that capital. Definitely the SMEs are going to not be able to do that. And this is why the initiative of what Hyatt is going to look at and the Secretariat will be looking at, the whole idea is to try to empower existing employees, white-collar employees in the organization and owners, so that they be comfortable enough to pick up enough of that, what I call digital readiness skills, so that they help themselves. I mean, nobody's asking them to sit down there and do the programming, right? But they just need to understand how they can help themselves and what are some of the valuable solutions out there that could empower them. So to me, I think that's really priority that we're going to put on the table for ourselves to look into. I noticed, Steve, there's a question by one of the it's on the chat where he talks about talking about developing countries versus developed countries, and whether in this whole journey of technology and automation, whether it's going to further widen the gaps. My personal take is that honestly, it's not necessary that at the end of the day the developed world is going to win. Because the developed world as a whole, we all are sitting on legacy systems, legacy support infrastructure. And to some extent, the newer emerging economies, I mean, just look at Vietnam. Look how quickly it is transforming, even faster than China. So look at India's own journey in terms of smart digital telecommunication, how everybody has a handset, everybody is doing smart transactions online. And to me, this is where it all matters. How do we make technology affordable, accessible? And with cloud, I think that it really universalizes the ability for the whole value chain of developing countries to come onto the journey. So I'm not too worried about this divide. I think obviously resourcing is needed, but definitely the cost to get there for the new emerging economies is definitely going to be a lot more economical. And you are going to leapfrog and move into the next phase quite quickly, where most of the developed countries are still stuck in our own inherent invested systems and processes. So there is hope for everyone. So Steve, I'd like to stop here. Maybe I'll let the other panelists come on.
Sure, and to your point and the other panelists' points, I talked to a number of companies who are looking, to move to Southeast Asia, headquarter in Singapore, or open up in other markets. And it used to be the number one question was regulatory. Can we get the approvals, or what the competitive environment is like? Now it's all human capital. The first three questions are: is human capital available in market? Can I bring it into market given the employment restrictions that are coming out as a result in part of COVID? So this is where public affairs, business, all merges right now on this one incredible topic. And part of why you have this stress between immigration and business is because people see a rising income inequality that comes when we bring in all of this technology, and we have the have and have-nots. And Manuel Manalo asks a question, how can we make sure automation and digitalization don't impact income inequality? How can workers from all backgrounds benefit from technological innovations in the world of work? And maybe I think what we can start with Manuel and finance on this, because you touched upon it in your opening remarks, and then Elizabeth, if you want to have your inputs on this one as well.
Well, I mean, in my view, of course, whenever there is change, there is a risk, right? And the question is how do you manage that risk? And when there's risk, there's also opportunities. And I think that's what Elizabeth mentioned also, right? With all this disruption, there's also a lot of opportunities that are coming up. I'll take an example in banking, for example. I think one of the recent developments has been the QR codes, right? QR codes are now everywhere. And I think it has provided the ability for really small merchants to be able to take payments digitally without having to invest heavily in point of sales equipment, having a leased line. And it has given them an opportunity to a whole new different market. My experience in Brunei, the amount of sellers that are doing business on Instagram, I don't know if Elizabeth can confirm, but in Brunei, you buy a lot of things on Instagram. And, I would never see that in Belgium. I mean, we don't use Instagram that way. But I think these countries, it has allowed people from their home to create a business from scratch with, limited overheads. Because some of them also, it's all pre-order basis, right? So they don't have to invest a lot in stocks and things like that. So I do believe there is still opportunity for people with different backgrounds to actually take advantage of the innovations that are currently in the market. Now, it doesn't mean that it's for everyone, right? And it also, some jobs will remain non-digital. Some jobs, people will still need to be doing them manually. And I don't think that there's a lot we can do about it unless technology really evolves to something different. But again, I think there's a risk, but there's a lot of opportunities. And I'm seeing, especially in Southeast Asia, a lot of people taking these opportunities to build their businesses on new technology.
Thank you, Manuel.
Yeah,
I'd like to add, in fact, when His Excellency mentioned marketplace, I immediately thought of the Facebook marketplace and did not think of the fish market. So, and everybody uses that in Brunei, as Manuel said, right? Instagram shopping or Facebook marketplace. As any new disruption or innovation comes in place, there would be inequality to begin with. I think what's important is for all sectors to recognize inequality and understand how to bridge that gap. I'll give an example. His Excellency mentioned about white collars, but I'm talking about blue collars also. When our operators and technicians are out there, be it even business partners out there physically, and these are tasks that we probably will not over the next 2 or 3 years or 5 years be able to remove completely. But when they now start going in, we ask them to wear a smart helmet and go. The smart helmet starts recording, but there is a part of the individual who wants to, it's two-way, right? The organization wants to automate, digitize. What is the work that the individual is ready to do? Most of them would say, I don't want to wear that smart helmet. I'm actually okay with the original helmet. So there is that bit of, I think it is not just communities, organizations, academia, and collaborations that are going to create an ecosystem to develop capabilities. There's also a part that the individuals, the white collars, the blue collars have to play to bring that in, to bridge that inequality. I see that as a very important part. You have to take ownership, irrespective of your background, to see how you can keep up with the technologies and tools, whether it is shopping on marketplace or Instagram, or whether wearing that smart helmet to be able to digitize the data that I'm able to see and my colleague would be able to use for his next visit on site.
I'm going to try and get as many questions as we can since we don't have a lot of time left. So for this one, I'm going to go to Anthony and Ruma. So the question from our 800 plus person audience. Nowadays, remote working has become really stressful for some people due to unclear working hours. Overwork is real. Ruma, you mentioned 48 hours more per person, 48 minutes more per person per day. I'm for sure for some of us, it's a lot more than that. So Anthony, Ruma, what's your thoughts on this since it's related to workers' mental health, and what can we do about it? Anthony?
Yeah, sure. Look, it's definitely real, and it's I think for many people not something that they anticipated. I think people assumed that working from home was going to create a better level of balance, but it hasn't really, which is why I'm not sure there's that many people that do really want to be 100% from home. What's happened? We've eliminated boundaries. So the concept of commuting to work or commuting home, which creates that gap between work and home, has disappeared. I think we've seen people are perhaps not respecting the time of day as much as they once did, almost assuming, well, someone's at home anyway, I might as well dial in on Teams, Zoom, or whatever it might be. So I think this comes back to the challenge of leadership, where you've got to be able to create scenarios where there are disciplines put in place where people are able to get that distance, and it's really been exacerbated in environments where homeschooling has been prevalent as well. So I think we do have this build up of stress, and we also have a lot of people who haven't been able to take a holiday or take a break, and to some degree we might even have artificially high levels of productivity because people have literally worked 2 or 3 weeks more this year than or the last 18 months than what they might in the future. As an organisation, we've implemented things like we call it a page break, where there's a day a month where you just literally are not allowed to be engaging with anyone to do with work. It's easier said than done, but we've tried to enforce that. But yeah, I don't know that there are any perfect solutions other than to really understand and be aware of it. Ruma?
Thank you very much, Anthony and Steve. So let me think about the question in perhaps three different contexts. The first is, we speak to our customers. How should they plan for the collaborative, workspace of the future? And then the second dimension is really around what Anthony was talking about, things like employee engagement and policies and processes. And then the final piece is really around these tools and platforms that you can really leverage in order to support the first two. So if I think about the first one, really, the first piece here is everything has to be contextual. So at the end of the day, all of the work that we're doing today on a screen has to be set around specific context. So whether that context is time of day, whether it's location, whether it's the device that you're on, these are really important aspects to understanding, how you set out a workspace or a hybrid work environment of the future. And I don't think enough people and organizations really think about this because it's very important to how employees actually perceive the way that they engage with their virtual workplace. The second piece is around this concept I go back to of time. And time again is really important. Anthony, one way to tackle time is through leadership. You're absolutely spot on. Another way to tackle time is actually through a calendar that allows you to set out focused time where nobody can interrupt you. And that's one of the things that we do at Google with some of our tools. So I think there are ways to really set out blocks of time to enable people to sort of not be on the screen in video conferences, but really be focused on the work at hand, which would then enable them to perhaps reduce that extra 48 minutes of time that they would spend at work and reduce that down to perhaps 10 minutes. And that actually improves on sort of the mental health aspect. The second piece is around this area of employee engagement and policies and processes. I will say Google also has our global reset days. So this is one where basically, and they're very sacred actually, nobody can really reach out to other Googlers during that day. We have one coming up in October, another one coming up in December. We basically do this every single quarter. And this is particularly important because it's a way of working across the entire enterprise that ensures that people have that downtime for that one day. And I think, being very, very sacred about, keeping that framework and keeping that reset day, to just the individual to allow them to really dial off from video conferences is particularly important. And then the last piece is really around the technology. I talked about this focus time that we typically use. The other tool that we have access to is the amount of time that we're in meetings in a particular week. So it turns out if I go to my calendar right now, I'll basically see, the number of hours for next week that I've already got scheduled in meetings. That sort of triggers you to sort of reset yourself and say, well, is that too much? Is that too much on a particular day or a particular week? And I think in that way, employees can really sort of moderate themselves in terms of helping themselves figure out what's best for them as we sort of evolve to this new area of hybrid work. So that would be sort of the framework that I would think about this.
That's great, and that's a perfect lead into our final question. Everybody, you're going to get 1 minute or less, and I'm going to ask you for the one thing that you think industry leaders should be doing to be ready to harness all of that available computing power that's out there to meet the need for innovation, for smart technology, for field devices as it comes to the future of work. So the top thing that comes to mind that industry leaders should be focused on, and we'll go in the order that we started. So Elizabeth, putting you on the spot first.
Thank you. One thing that came up when you asked that question is continuous learning for leaders, continuous learning across all platforms of people and levels of people.
All right, so continuous learning. Manuel.
To me, it's understanding your customers' needs. I think that there needs to be a lot of efforts understanding what are the customer needs, what do they really want, because we might have sometimes a view in our ivory tower that, oh, this is what needs that the people want, and then we develop it, and then we don't understand why nobody's using it, and because there hasn't been enough studies to really understand what do they want, what do people need, and that's, to me, is key.
And all of this new computing power now, is that our business is going to be able to do that better now if they understand it, do you think?
I think that if they are able to understand the data that they collect, which again, it's not that straightforward for different industries, banking included, but yes, there are opportunities in that data, right? So they should be able to harness that power.
Anthony?
Yeah, I think every organization is going to need to have a focus on innovation if they want to attract and retain the best people. But just linking to Elizabeth's point about continuous learning, it's trying to create an environment where everyone feels as though they can progress and learn, even if it's only marginally, and eliminate the fear of new technology and new advances.
And just, I read somewhere that people aren't, they don't talk about being the head of HR anymore. They now talk about having chief people officers, and that these are now C-suite. Is that coming to ASEAN?
We certainly have that, and most organisations. I guess it's a larger company topic. I'm not so sure it's relevant or it works that way for SMEs, where you'll have leaders that wear a number of different hats. But certainly the emphasis on people as well as technology has never been stronger.
Ruma?
Yeah, the power of speed and the power of belief. If we were in 2019, pre-pandemic, and if I'd asked any of our panelists or any of my customers to say, look, all of your employees have to be on video, I would suspect that many of you would have told me it's going to take 6 months. It's going to take, lots and lots of resources. Not sure we can get the testing done properly. All sorts of things, all sorts of, roadblocks. But I tell you, all of us did this in a week or less. Many of us did it in 24 hours. So we can do it. We can digitize quickly, and we have to believe we can do that. And we have to continue on this journey.
And Your Excellency, I'm not sure if you were able to hear this part of the panel, but one of the things that the panel was talking about how best practices are now is to have reset days, because we're all online so much that we force, they Google, everybody, we're going to shut down for a day, one a quarter. No one's going to do any work because we need to refresh. So I would like to make a formal recommendation to you, maybe on behalf of the entire panel, that ASEAN adopt a quarterly reset day. So if you, as the Deputy Secretary General, can push that through, we would be greatly appreciative of that. And I'm going to turn it over to you on how ASEAN and the Secretariat and the economic community sees the future of work in working with industry, and give you the last word.
Sure. Thank you, Steve. I wish I could do that. Have the magic wand to do that. I think, if anything, all of us are struggling to deal with both the COVID and the transformation. If anything, the extra firepower is here to stay. I don't see a respite, unfortunately. This is across everyone, the private sector and the governments. We have never imagined where we are today, that we will come to this stage. But imagine we are going through it. So that again shows you, as I totally agree with so many of the panelists, the resiliency of all of us in being able to cope with it. It again shows you the true potential of where we are heading. And if it's not for the pandemic itself, as Manuel was explaining, now they're accepting digital signature. Most of the global banks won't even accept digital documentation. We will still be doing paper submissions to the banks for their loans and for trade finance. So extraordinary things are happening right now. And obviously the COVID has been extremely challenging and difficult for all of us, but at the same time, it's changed and moved the whole paradigm and shift. It's a total shift in mindset and openness to embrace technology, digitalization, and openness. And I think it begins at home. Look at the way we are making kids do online learning. Look at the way we are talking to our doctors more and more online. And then obviously keeping in touch with everyone more and more online and doing everything that we need to do, including shopping, groceries. So it begins at home. And I think that mindset, that change is already embedded in most of us, in all our societies. I think moving forward, I think where I'm also looking at is, as I mentioned, I think that the nature of the job is also going to change. I think more and more of us are going to be moving out of the formal job economy into more of contracting, right? Economy where all of us may become contractors, meaning to say that many more organizations are going to hire people more on contract basis and not on permanent basis. So I see that happen in all the developed societies, even before COVID. So even I understand, even in the US, 60% of all jobs are contract jobs. So we are heading towards that. But if anything, this whole need for individuals to take the journey themselves, the responsibility on themselves, to reskill themselves, to make themselves relevant, is ever more important. And I think it starts and begins at home, at yourself. And then after that, you find your relevancy of how you're going to contribute economically and to yourself and to your family and the community. So again, like I said, never before has the empowerment been in our hands. And governments definitely, we all are moving quickly in order to ensure that no one is left behind. And programs are going to be rolled out towards skilling more and more people towards this journey. But like I said, this cannot be done alone. It has to also come along with the private sector also standing by and supporting us. I give you a small example. We actually have an SME academy on the ASEAN side, where many of these large players, including Google, is on board, where you are offering free technology training to all young people, young school leavers who are looking for job employability, or even mid-career growth, you're looking to switch and get some exposure to new skill sets. So you see SAP there, you see Google's there, you see all of these technology companies today. They are providing free access to some of the people to embrace some of this training on themselves. So I do see there are avenues, but you just need to make sure that all these people out there, they know where to help themselves. So back to you, Steve.
Nope. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the panelists. We appreciate being invited today, and I turn it back over to our Master of Ceremonies.
Stephen, all your panelists, thank you so much. That was a very candid and interesting session on the future of work. So ladies and gentlemen, while we transition to our next important discussion on skills for a digital age, we'd like to play a short message from Brunei Shell Petroleum, one of our platinum sponsors. Ladies and gentlemen, our next panel discussion is on skills for a digital age. I'll be leading with a keynote address by Mark Garnier, MT, Prime Minister's envoy to Brunei, Myanmar, and Thailand. So we hand over now to our moderator for this session, Dr. Samir Katiwada, Technology and Innovation Specialist, Social Sectors with the Asian Development Bank, to introduce our speakers and lead us through our sessions. Dr. Samir, welcome.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay, first of all, many thanks to everybody who's joining our panel discussion today. So today we'll be talking about skills development, so future of skills, and it's very nice that we are going right after the panel that just concluded on future of work. So I think it builds on that in many ways. So we have a really amazing lineup of speakers today with us. Let me provide a brief introduction, but I know you will hear more from the speakers themselves. So we've got three speakers with us today. First, Dato Palani. Dato is he is the chairman of the ASEAN Future Workforce Council, a body led by business and industry that advances ASEAN-wide action on future skills and TVET development, and serves as a member of the newly formed ASEAN TVET Council. So Dato, rest assured, I'll be asking you a lot of questions about the role of TVET sector, given the rapidly changing demand for labor in our region. The second speaker we have is Janine Teo. Janine has been doing some really interesting and exciting work using education technologies. He is the CEO of Solve Education. Really looking forward to talking to you, Janine, today. And the last speaker we have today is Suzanne Coogan. She's the Vice President of Shell. Suzanne will bring us will provide us the industry perspective on the future of skills development, the role of employer-provided training, and all the issues around how do we engage with private sector more as we look to reskill and upskill our workforce. With that, let me start. Let me start by inviting Mark, who will be giving us keynote. Sorry, I actually got a bit confused now because I was just introducing the panel, but I wasn't aware that I was supposed to introduce Mark as well.
Well, Dr. Samir, thank you very much indeed. It's always rather difficult at this time of day to get the running order quite right. But thank you very much for that introduction. The Honourable Minister for Education, Brunei Darussalam, the Honourable YB Yanti Raymond, Chair of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, Haslina Taibi, Chair of the ASEAN Business and Investment Summit, and Farido Dato Talib, Managing Director and CEO of Brunei Darussalam. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, this pandemic has focused minds on boosting skills for the digital age. And so I'd therefore like to thank ASEAN BAC for making today's important discussion happen. If today's telecast is anything to go by, your ASEAN Business and Investment Summit next month will be an absolute triumph. So it's a privilege to join you following the UK becoming ASEAN's newest and first dialogue partner for 25 years. As the Prime Minister's trade envoy to Brunei Darussalam, I'm immensely grateful to Brunei for their support as chair in achieving this milestone. That said, of course, I should point out that we are not exactly the new kid on the block here. We've been a friend and partner of ASEAN since its creation over 50 years ago, and our links with the region are centuries old. Dialogue partner status is the foundation of an enhanced relationship between the UK and ASEAN, its communities and its member states. It provides a platform for boosting our two-way trade, standing at almost £34 billion annually. It means closer collaboration on clean growth, a particular focus of Brunei as ASEAN chair, and the UK as president of COP26. But it also means deeper digital ties, including ASEAN's ecosystem through the recently launched ASEAN-UK Digital Innovation Partnership. Taking our people-to-people links to the next level is another shared priority. It is clear that ASEAN values a UK education. Before the pandemic, there were over 40,000 ASEAN students studying in the UK, and a further 125,000 were reading for a UK degree remotely. A UK education opens doors and opportunity wherever you are in the world. And the UK is home to a quarter of the world's top 20 universities, and a quarter of the world's leaders studied here in the UK. So in the spirit of deepening our people-to-people links even further, I'm delighted to announce UK support for HIRED, ASEAN-backed 2021 Legacy Project. HARD will help ASEAN achieve UN Sustainable Development Goals, ensuring employers meet the skills gaps and offer resilient employment in this digital age. A strong workforce is key to a stronger, greener recovery from COVID-19. The UK will support HARD by developing a pilot apprenticeship scheme, providing seed funding and technical and vocational skills expertise. The pilot will focus on data and analysts. That's because across ASEAN, data analysts are both in high demand and in short supply. The pilot will also focus on Brunei as this year's ASEAN chair. Once the pilot has been completed, ASEAN BAC expects to expand HIRED across ASEAN. So working across the UK and Bruneian businesses and technical training communities, we will explore how best to shrink the skills gap surrounding data analysis, and in doing so, we will establish new alliances for skills training. We will also harness digital technology to include hard-to-reach students. I believe this is a vital piece of work. It is crucial that we ensure a supply of top talent to meet demand. Our support is about preparing ASEAN's workforce to unleash the region's full potential as a crucible of innovation, an economic powerhouse set to be the fourth largest economy by 2030. To coin a phrase, it's about caring, preparing, and prospering. So my thanks to today's distinguished panelists. I look forward to a lively exchange of views on skills for the digital age. Dr. Samir, back to you.
Thank you so much, Mark. That was very good and setting the stage. My apologies for missing to introduce you. You have such an amazing background. I was just looking at what to say about Mark, but I think Mark's opening remarks summed up, I think, his views on what we'll be discussing today in terms of looking at skills development, the role that the region plays, and the relationship between the UK and ASEAN. There's a lot to talk about. Let me start actually by inviting our panelists. Mark, if you don't mind, I'm going to start inviting our panelists just to give a quick opening remarks, and then we'll get into a Q&A. First, we'll start with Dato. Dato, over to you.
Right. Thank you, Samir. Right. I think I was told that got about 45 minutes. I'm going to give you an overview because the subject is something that's very close to our heart. I think ASEAN Future Workforce Council has been working on this subject together with our business representative from the member states related to TVET matter. Right. I think as we are aware, the ASEAN region has experienced some of the highest growth rates in the world, with investment in skills playing a significant role in helping national economies to adjust to the changes in working practice, advances in technology, and challenges associated with globalization. In certain ASEAN member states, I think this process has been successfully managed with some good significant advances, while the other member states are in the progress of embarking due to the dynamism of the region, where the economic perspective and the education and the structure very much differs, right? So each member states are moving in their own phase with a different level of progress that could be monitored, right? But nevertheless, I think one of the key things that we need to acknowledge is that the last World Economic Forum indicated that about 42% of the core skill will change by 2022, and probably by 2030, about 1 billion of the total world workforce may need to reskill and to look at the skill set that they've actually acquired in order for them to move forward. With these challenges, the dynamic of these challenges, I think I wish to go straight to the core challenge that probably is one that cut across in the region. Based on our work, we can see very significantly the issue of skills mismatch. All right. I think this is one of the pertinent issue, and those of us in the fraternity knows that this is the core issue that probably, if it's well addressed, we could see a good significant progress. I think the skill development of labor force requires an enabling environment so that the provision of skill is balanced with the provision of opportunities to use these skills. Right? Therefore, skill development should be integrated with employment promotion for both the formal and informal private sector. In particular, international cooperation in developing an enabling environment for micro and small enterprise is of critical importance. It's essential to examine the interaction between country approaches to skill development and country looks at skill utilization. All right. So past experience suggests that training alone will, in most cases, result in a very disappointing employment outcomes. All right. So, of the central lesson that we could learn is that there is a necessity for the country policymakers to look into industrial policies that target growth in sectors that have employment potential. Right. So once industry policy is set, it's easier for the stakeholders to match the balance between the demand and the supply of skills. Right. Probably, unfortunately, the bigger challenge in this region is that it is very much supply driven rather than demand driven. All right. So we always face the circumstances that the skill acquired eventually is not being utilized, less utilized, because there's no direct link to that scenario. But there's a need to raise the scale of training, because I think the bigger challenge is also the quality part of it, consistently also the scale in terms of the quantity, the level, because we are also having a situation of not only the high skill but mid skill level, and those who are in the informal sector which has acquired the skill but they are not recognized in the formal perspective as a skilled employee, right? So I think and also the provision of certification, and this is a big challenge within the region as well, because there's a big labor mobilization within the region, and then the acceptance of a common standard that could be utilized to recognize the acquisition of the skill and knowledge that can cut across the region could be one of the area that is very pertinent to look at. Right. I think, looking at this dynamic, but what I'm saying is that there's a great opportunity, because I think skill is, relook at the skill enhancement is the way forward. And then as we embark the fourth industrial revolution, I think the evaluation of the digital technology now with the impact of the pandemic, what that we used to say is going to come in 5 years, 10 years, is probably has arrived. And most of the people are actually in the midst of it, strategizing or looking at how to manage it, as well as to go along and live with that changes. Right? We have identified, the ASEAN Workforce Council. Some of my colleagues are also here as a audience of this session. I saw some of them just now. Right? We have come out with a 45 recommendation upon a very detailed study looking at the dynamic of the region. Some of the areas that we identified as key game changers are factors that need to be looked at in order for us to enhance the skill adaptability and the movement. One of it is to enhance the relevance and the quality of TVET regulation and strategies. This is something that is very critical to look at, and probably this could be better managed with the effective involvement of the private sector at the policy and the regulation stage, in order to ensure that we don't design the policy and subsequently we go back to the operation side and come back. So we have also actually suggested a formation of National TVET Council at each ASEAN member states, comprising of policymakers and the industry to work as a partner, rather than one policy side being set up, the other side is responding towards it when the damage is done, or probably asking things to happen. Right? So that is one. Another thing is also to establish public-private model for skill standard development and assessment. I think within the region, big organizations like probably maybe Suzanne will be sharing later, Shell, Petronas, and a few other companies have established good standards, which probably could be emulated. We could be able to benchmark, cut it across within the region, and you can see better adaptation of it. Of course, the ASEAN Future Workforce Council itself is one of the recommendations which has successfully come on board, because today we are advocating the need of the industry perspective, a corporate perspective, because we felt one of the biggest challenge in TVET is that when it's too supply driven, we may not be able to really utilize the skill that's required, right? And one of the biggest, I think all of us would agree, the branding of the skill education in the region has to be completely changed, and we got to leverage it because there's a general trend. I think you would agree, Samir, that those who opted for the skill education are those normally are not so successful in pursuing the traditional certification via the university and academic pathway. And this generally created an impression that it is not a priority area. But in reality, skilled graduates are those who get employment almost immediately compared to the university, conventional areas of studies. All right. So the reputation and the branding of the skill education has to be revamped and then relooked at in order for us to move forward. And I think I'll stop at this juncture on some of the recommendations. Probably we could take on and see the perspective of from. But what I'm trying to bring forward here is that the evaluation of skill, it is not an issue of the policymaker alone. I think we have to come to a stage where the industry, the corporate, has to take a more proactive approach, and the policymakers has to accept the reality. It has to be shaped as a demand driven, and in order for us to move forward and ensure that the right perspective is seen in the development of the skill based employment moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dato. There was a lot of interesting insights there. So I'm going to come back to you later on during the Q&A, but a couple of things that sort of stood out from listening to you. Of course, the first thing is that the skills that will be demanded, not just in 30 years, but in 10 years. Some of those skills, are we supplying them in our TVET institutions, in our higher education institutions? That's something is really, really important to keep in mind. Sort of the demand for labor, the type of jobs that will emerge, the new types of work, and are we getting ready for them? So that's the first point that I think you raised. That was very, very good, and we'll get into it. The other is sort of the what is the role of TVET given the skills mismatch between supply and demand? Are we more supply focused? How can we be more demand focused? How can we link with industry? And this is a perennial problem that we see in the TVET sector. And this is something that I'll get into as well. And the other one that you mentioned on sort of encouraging ASEAN member states to have a TVET council, including private sector. This is something that actually I've been involved in a couple of work that we are doing in Indonesia and in the Philippines, precisely on these aspects. I'll get back to you on this as well. But one thing I will before I go to Janine, just to give you a bit more time to think about it. What do you see the role of publicly provided training going forward, or even TVET in general? You mentioned this regulation, the issue of regulation. And one thing I've noticed, especially in Indonesia, there's Ministry of Manpower and Ministry of Education, different sets of regulations, right, for the same type of qualification. How do we arrive at a situation where even our supply is sort of, technically we don't create a mismatch when somebody goes with a qualification? Can I know for sure I'm hiring the right plumber when the certificate says he's a plumber, right? So this is something that I want you to think about a bit more, and we'll get into it during the Q&A. Now let me go to Janine. Janine has been doing a lot of interesting work leveraging technology in sort of skills development. So we'll hear a bit more about that. Over to you, Janine. Thank you.
Thank you, Samir. And thank you so much, Datuk, for sharing your thoughts. I also found your insights so interesting. And the question that I asked myself is, supply-driven versus demand-driven, how can we actually switch from a supply-driven system to a demand-driven system, right? Now, my work is a little bit more downstream from what you've described. Just to give you a little bit of context, so self-education's the main problem that we are trying to solve is the 260 million children and youth who do not go to school today, and the many more that go to school that are not learning. Right? And for this demographic, they're not able to go to school no matter how many schools we build or how many teachers we train. So the question that we asked ourselves was, how do we bring the schools to them? And I hear from the previous panelists that mobile phones start to become more popular, right? And it's so true that even for our audience, many of them, their only technology that they have, they are in touch with are their phones. And it's really exciting that low-end phones are really penetrating the bottom of the pyramid, the masses, right? Now, we also are realistic that mobile phones are only solving one part of the problem, which is access, but there's a bigger part of the problem, which is effectiveness, like what Datuk was mentioning, right? And today's education may not be relevant, engaging, or effective. And, Brunei has a high youth unemployment rate, and where I work the most in Indonesia also has a very high youth unemployment rate. Despite college graduates increasing, right, youth unemployment rates still remain high. So for this demographic, right, if they can't find a job, that will not change a single thing for them. So when we first started in our journey, the question that we asked ourselves is, what should we teach? And because it's really hard to forecast, right? In 5 to 10 years' time, what jobs will be available or what skills will be relevant. And I'm talking from the perspective of somebody who works in skills and the workforce of the future space, as well as a tech entrepreneur. Let me give you an example, right? 5 years ago, a lot of the companies are still doing quality assurance QA, right? Testing out the technology products by with human testers, right? So with the human testers will click through the website or click on apps and see whether those work or not. Now that has already, in a short span of time, replaced by automated testing, where engineers are the ones who write the test. So there's no more real need for manual testers. And in 2 years, I already saw new products coming out that replaced the engineers who wrote the test automation. And that is the off-the-shelf testing tools. So the skills really move so quickly, and hence, and because we are at the forefront of the tech sector, right? We see that right in front of our eyes, and myself being a software engineer. So when we asked ourselves what skills is most relevant, we got to the conclusion that the ability to learn how to learn is so much more important than before. But what does that mean? So in our mind, we dissect that into two main buckets. One is the hard skills and one are soft skills, right? The hard skills being literacy and numerical skills. So you need to be able to read, but not only read, but fully comprehend what you read. At the same time, also being able to think and analyze, right? And that will help you to be able to learn anything you want. However, that's not enough, right? Because learning at the end of the day is hard, right? And with all these new skills and fields of work coming in, right? Or new skills that are in demand, we also need the soft skills like curiosity, even grit, right? To not give up. And it can be disheartening because I'm learning something, but suddenly something new comes along, and what I've learned is no longer relevant. So how do we also design an education system where we also train the soft skill side? And in our view, we need to train our learners into independent, lifelong learners, where they are able to, whenever there's a new skill, they don't wait for the government to, I need to wait for training to happen. If not, I won't learn, because a lot of things are available on Google, right? And I will just maybe leave you with two stories. One, I bumped into this, taxi driver in Indonesia, right? And he spoke English with an American accent. And I was so surprised how he managed to do so. And, he told me what? He said, I went to the school of Google. So, if there's anything that I don't know, I'll search, right? And he's quite right. A lot of things we can actually learn through Google, but why are a lot of, people are just sitting and waiting to be trained, right? A more proactive mindset, in our opinion, would really help with moving the youth and making them relevant for the workforce of the future. And a second story is something very recent that happened to us. So Soft Education has gone into a partnership with TikTok, and it is a whole new world. And even myself, I need to learn because I have no idea that actually creating short, entertaining videos are so difficult. So even myself, who's a software engineer, I know all the different coding things, but there's still a lot of things to learn and new things to explore. So I guess I'll leave myself to that. Thank you, Samir.
Thank you, Janine, for sharing the stories and also telling us more about your work. I think what you hit upon there by talking about teaching um, kids in primary, secondary school, and all the way from higher ed, students in higher ed and TVED, the ability to sort of how to learn, how do you learn new things. It's not always easy. I think you just made me feel bad for not figuring out how to learn Python, because that's the new programming language, right? So, and even economists have moved on to using Python and R, but I'm still using Stata and the old school for my analysis. But anyway, so that's something else. But we'll get into it in a second. Let's hear from Suzanne, more from the private sector, how a big industry player is sort of keeping track with the changing demand for labor within the industry, and how the efforts at skilling and reskilling from your perspective. Suzanne, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Samir, and good afternoon to everyone in the virtual room. I'm Suzanne Coogan. I'm Shell's Vice President to Brunei, LNG, and BGC. So it's been abundantly clear through all the conversations that we've heard today, and as shared by all our speakers and panelists, that in many ways the nature of work across ASEAN has fundamentally shifted and will continue to change as digital and digitalization occurs, and again, even more so in the face of COVID-19. Without deep thought and very considered action, though, some of the key measures by which we will measure success of this transformation may actually not materialize. Really, we need to think about how we can mitigate the unemployment impacts from what we've heard today referred to as the fourth industrial revolution, to give people the skills that really can uplift them as workers if they're unskilled, and give them some formal training, whilst also in parallel continuously educating and upskilling those already in digital roles. We know and appreciate that digital technologies are really transforming our lives in ways that were not in any way imaginable even a decade ago. Companies are now striving to be almost wholly digital. And for those who are successful in this space, then they move into the concept of digitalization. And it starts with having the basics, just a simple, secure internet system, and then moving up into very advanced IT infrastructure. And we've heard the mention of automation and robotics and artificial intelligence, machine learning, and cloud computing, and many other concepts that are out there and being embedded within many different industries. Within the company I work for now, within the industry that I'm working in, there are many pioneering developments and deployments of digital technologies that have taken place over many decades. There's a huge number of examples where digitization has allowed us to operate more safely, create ways in which more laborious jobs can be automated, and use data in a way that allows people to spend their time on far more fulfilling jobs and meaningful roles that allows them to maximize the individual impact that they can have, and also some, the satisfaction they get from the jobs they're doing. But let me give you just a couple examples from the industry I'm in right now. So essentially, digital technologies are now contributing to our societal license to operate, and essentially helping us improve the safety and transparency of all our operations. We can use robots in places that are potentially hazardous rather than sending people to go into them. We now have the ability to analyze 10 million data points every minute on equipment such as pumps and furnaces, and just making sure that we're able to maximize their performance, which gives us more stable operations and also gives us greater energy efficiency. We can now use artificial intelligence and machine learning to reduce downtime in equipment, and this can lead to lost production and maintenance costs if we're not completely on top of it. Today, we can even use drones to make fully immersive digital twins of our assets. And one of the best examples we have is actually here in Singapore in our Buchan plant. And these are technological advances that were just unattainable a few years ago, based on the access, training, and ability to really be able to access that level of data. So when we think about digitization, and what I've just spoken about there is all about technology and data, but really the concepts that we've heard today and that we've heard people speaking about, it's about people, their behaviors, their training, and their agile ways of working. We need a blend of people who can not only develop digital solutions, but who can also understand what the business impact of those solutions actually mean, and how we can really bring the digitization into a space where it can be value adding and also in a sustainable way. But in truth, and as we've as Dato Palani there shared, we are starting from very different points with a diverse range of skills in different areas across the region that are not equal. Essentially, education and development policies continue to play a key role, which we've just heard about there. But in industry, we also have a shared responsibility to help equip today and futures generations with the skills they need to be able to develop. It is not something that we just look back and expect educators and governments and policy to deliver. It's something that we should be working in partnership with those individuals and those government departments to be able to deliver. Many countries in which we operate today as Shell want to improve their access to technical and digital education and to be able to see greater opportunities for skills development. We have a couple of programs that are global that we use to be able to meet this objective. Two of them, one is the Science, Technology, Engineering and Maths Education Program, and the other one is the Community Skills and Enterprise Development Program that we have. The STEM program is designed to help directly address some of the challenges we've been talking about with regards to digitization. And we have a flagship program called N Explorers, which runs in 20 different countries, or almost 20 different countries now. And closer to home in Brunei, we have the Shell Livewire Brunei initiative, which is now a global program that focuses on entrepreneurship. And today, a lot of those programs that have been looked at, and a lot of the content of that is really focused around digital and technology. And this is done very, very in close partnership with the Education Ministry. And as I said, it's a great example in Brunei of how this has been done successfully. I will add that the Community Skills and Development Enterprise Program does link directly the skills that are being offered and provided and the training that's being given is directly linked in a lot of cases to employment opportunities. So we try to understand the needs and skills gaps in the communities in which we're working and provide the training there that directly links to employment. And as we just heard just a moment ago as well, that is fundamentally allows people to move on in their education, but also move on in their livelihoods and up the ladder in terms of what they're able to do. So, and just to give a quick example, in Shell, I think we spent about $100 million on the collective group of these programs across the world since I think it was just in 2019, $100 million. So we do put a lot of effort and we do put a lot of funding behind these particular initiatives. There is one thing that I would like to just conclude with, though, and that's around our own individual responsibility. I think we've heard very clearly from just there that, you know, we have government policy, we have the education system and the ministries that really are taking a leadership role here, working in parallel, hopefully in partnership with industry. But it's also us as individuals that bring, as Janine said just there, that grit and curiosity to learn. And I have to say that I am the generation of hotmail.com and I am a geophysicist by training. And I started my career 15 years ago. And I have no choice but to continue to learn and to continue to learn digital skills or choose to be outdated. Now, I am very privileged that I work in a company that allows and facilitates and encourages graduate and mid and later career skills training and development. And for that, I do feel exceptionally privileged. But I do fundamentally believe that we have to acknowledge that fear and that uncomfortable situation that we all may face mid-career when we have to make a choice on whether or not we do actually go learn Python or we choose to learn something different that keeps us relevant today. So I believe that by combining all of these different areas, the government, the educational industries, but education, also industry, and our own individual passion, we will be able to get to a point where we continue to develop these skills, continue to upskill ourselves and the workforce so that we and the industries we work in remain digitally relevant and overall, hopefully contribute positively to society.
Thank you, Suzanne. That was excellent. So now I think by the end of this panel, I'm going to have to start using School of Google to learn Python. But you know, I want to get to one point that all of you kind of alluded to, which was, you know, the quality of training at TVET, and Dato mentioned the perception that people have about TVET as well. I'll start with that first, and then there are several questions that have come on from the audience as well. The first is, Dato, maybe I'll start with you, and then I'll go to Janine and Suzanne. Yes, we all know that the perception when it comes to TVET is not always the best, and there's a good reason for that, right? Maybe it's the quality of training, maybe it's the types of standards that are set to sort of evaluate, to certify the training programs and the graduates who go through these programs. So we need to sort of understand where is the fault. Where does the fault line lie for this particular problem of perception, right? When I look at, now I'm sitting in Geneva talking to you, and, here, a lot of the folks who work in sort of you want to call it manual, but it's not necessarily low pay. It's actually highly productive, highly mechanized, automated jobs, which go directly from high school to they go into TVET, and then they enter into these relatively well-paid employment opportunities. But here, what is different and that I see compared to countries like Indonesia, Philippines, Cambodia, is that the foundation is strong, right? The primary, secondary school is very strong. So learning outcomes are strong at early levels, so they don't accumulate over time. But when we come to, when we go to places like Indonesia and then we talk about TVET, maybe it's too late. Maybe it's too late to talk about TVET or improve TVET even. Maybe it will not have an impact that we like to have, right? And that goes to what Janine was saying in terms of if learning outcomes, if kids are in school, yes, great, but are they learning? And if they're not learning, how can we change that, right? So I think it's all connected in a way. So first, I'll start with you, Dato, over to you, just for a minute or two, if you can reflect on this.
All right, okay. I think if you ask me the importance of skill education, where would be the right age or right stage for this to be embarked? I would say at even at the kindergarten stage. At that level, because you see the capacity and the ability of individual varies, and then not everybody is tuned to a certain way of learning, and they have that kind of ability. But the system is being created, I think, in a such a way that everybody has to go through that common pathway before they eventually come to a specific direction. And like what you said, by the time when they come over there, it's probably a bit too late to start it off, and some of them struggle as they move. I think one of the key factor that we need to change would be the changing the mindset of the parents. I think the way they look at that, I think it starts from home. It starts from where how they look at the potential and the opportunity of this. And I think this way of thinking, if we can look at it, because the traditional thinking of area of skill, it's like being connoted with a low level of technology, probably with low level of salary, and this actually contributed to build this kind of perception. But I think when we are able to showcase that the opportunity, the employable opportunity, the career development opportunity, and how they could progress a much more structured, long term in terms of skill pathway, I think the perception would eventually change. In fact, Samira, during the part of delegation, I think Maria is also here. She was part of a delegate. She's in the audience. We went to Stuttgart, GIZ facilitator. We went to Stuttgart. We did some study visit. So we went to the Mercedes-Benz training factory to make a factory tour. So we were break into a few groups. So I end up to the last group, Samir. So they said, we'll put you together with another delegates that is joining the session. So I waited, and finally my delegate partners came in, the other visitors, and they're all 5 and 6 year old kindergarten student. So here I am holding my bag, going there, and I've got about 5, 6 year old girls joining and then looking at it. See, but the way I look at it, when you're able to portray the positivity of that opportunity, that kind of a perception of growth from that pathway, and when the education system allow for you to explore both option, both pillars, and for you to decide what that could be suitable, I tell you that kind of change in policy could be a real game changer. And I think if we are able to advocate that part of the importance, then I think the acquisition of skill will not be a kind of an alternate arrangement, but it will go into a mainstream arrangement. And that will work, because you see, when we embark on fourth industrial revolution, it is not only about programming and all that. There are other areas which is equally important, and these could be the area that is very value added. And when it's embarked, I tell you, the region, from various perspectives, it doesn't matter from whether your local institution has the capacity or not. What actually would matter is that using the digital pathway opportunities, you'll be able to leverage and upskill yourself with a fundamental skill. And that actually could really take them forward and could change the life, in fact. All right. So, and that could bring a continuously a complete new perspective of opportunity, and that would enhance the driving the community towards the embarking on this. Because the way I look at it, acquisition of skill is also one of the effective way in eradication of poverty. Because once they have got a skill that they'll be able to not only to work as an employee, but also to explore opportunity as a gig worker, as a to explore opportunity as an entrepreneur, and this could actually really change lives. So I think like what Suzanne and Janine mentioned, I think it is about going down to the basic, but I think people still couldn't see it because we have been cultured, we have been conditioned in the way of thinking that the administrative or managerial pathway is the so-called the pathway comparatively, like compared to the huge opportunities that exist in the skill pathway compared to the managerial pathway, right? So this could be one of the real things to look at. And I think I just want to put in one point. I think I saw a comment one of the participants just now on the technology. You see, one of the best way to move forward for the institution or educators in this area is to collaborate with industry, because there's no way for the institution to innovate or invest or understand the changes, the rapid changes in the industry. But the business will be able to access it. They'll be able to judge, evaluate, because that is their survival. When institutions are able to integrate in that context, so you may suddenly move into a space of high-end technology, despite you may not have the physical assets, but you do have the software part of it. So this could be a real game changer kind of thing. And then when we embark on this kind of thing, I think we need more people like Susan to support the initiative that is done by Janine and us on advocating the importance of that. When they could see the association of a big employers, big brands in the enhancement of the skill education, that probably also would be one way to change the perception. Samir.
Thank you, Dato. One issue I'm going to pick up on, which is sort of you got into, of course, the perception of TVET and training in general. So the gap between demand for skills and supply of skills has always been there. It's not because of fourth industrial revolution, or it's not anything new per se. But what is happening now because of 4IR, one could argue, is that the gap is maybe widening at a faster pace than before. And I think here, of course, school systems, training systems, it takes a long time to update them, to reform them, right? And this is where people like Janine play a key role, right? So Janine has the mobile, using mobile technology to provide skills that is needed, for example, to the Gojek drivers in Indonesia, to teach them English, right? So that's where you can't do that in a school system in the right sort of the real time, to meet the real time demand, right? But you could do that with an initiative like that when you involve a private sector or an edtech startup, right? So Janine, over to you on this. How do you bridge the gap between demand and supply of skills?
Thank you so much, Samir. And Dr. I really couldn't agree more about education, the sector, working very closely with the industry. And many times because these two industries are working in silos. So educators in the education sector, we teach what we want to teach or what we plan to teach already. But the industry is moving a different way, right? Like you said, they need to survive and they need to pivot and they need to find new ways to solve problems. So definitely, I'm very, very much pro a tighter collaboration with the education sector and in the industry. And that's definitely the approach that we are taking. And I just, would like to address one of the questions, interesting questions here, right? How do we, provide and also improve educators in ASEAN, especially if they lack the industry exposure and experiences? And I also would like to tie that together with a lot of comments about, being proactive in learning, right? So I reflect on an Asian centralized training session that we did yesterday. So part of our work is to enable educators with digital skills. And because we found that as we roll out in different places, many educators actually do not have the exposure to technology or sufficient exposure to different digital tools. And what was interesting is that, I've seen in front of me when educators are, for the lack of a better word, screaming at the students over Zoom, don't read forward, don't click this and stuff, things like that. Well, for us, it's more of why don't we let the students click? Why don't we let the students be proactive? So the educator's mindset is not only just the digital skills, but also how to act as a facilitator of the students, so that the students are not being reprimanded or scolded because they're taking proactive ways to explore new content and or ask questions that are not within the curriculum itself, right? So I would say in terms of improving educators, it's not only just the technical skills, but also how do we encourage educators to allow our youth students to be proactive and not reactive learners, right? So that's something really interesting that came out of the training, where we have, and that's a common seems to be a common thread over. We had trainers from Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Philippines, Indonesia, etc. yesterday. So that was a very interesting discussion. And I also reflect back on one of our experience, recently, actually from Malaysia, this little school called SMK Jenjarum. And SMK Jenjarum actually is in the middle of a palm oil plantation. So most of the parents are farmers or plantation workers. And what was interesting about this school, and interesting about how the educators, teachers in this school think that's really different from other schools that we've seen, is that they work really closely with the industry. So they work really closely with us, and through us with other companies like Lenovo, like Microsoft, and they have even a very STEM-focused lab within the plantation school for their students to learn and to be hands-on. And I've even seen apps that the students create that is based out of what they, creating apps, solving their own problem about perhaps, deciding what to wear this morning, and other, problems that they face themselves, which I thought is really a very interesting way of teaching. And such schools, I think, would be really good to be role models, and for other schools around the region, and it has been. So I thought that's very interesting. And circling back to, reflecting and how do we support educators. So I do think that, the industry, as well as the Ministry of Education, need to play an active role in terms of reskilling and training of our teachers, rather than giving them so much more pressure in training, and it's so much more pressure in changing them. But how do we really support them and give them the help that they need, right? And hear that feedback. So I think that's a very important part. And definitely for ministries of education to provide that support to educators as well as students. But on top of everything, like what Datuk says, to work very closely with the industry, because the last thing you want is to train a bunch of people who are trained for jobs that don't exist. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. And so I'm glad that you discussed the point about the trainers and the teachers. And that was a question that was raised because one of the things that happened because of school closures due to COVID-19, when learning moved online, everybody assumed, yeah, you had the computer in front of you or mobile, whatever technology you were using or device or connectivity. but there was not much thought put to the teachers. Are they able to actually continue online? Can they teach online? Do we have the capacity? Do they have the capacity, right? None of those things. Of course, work, we went from one day to another quickly working from home, for those of us that were lucky enough to do that. And then we assume teachers could do the same thing. But actually, that's not the case for a lot of our countries and a vast majority of our students, right? So this is why we've been facing the digital divide, and not just in terms of access to technology, but
Absolutely.
also in terms of learning and all of that, right? But I think, now I want to pivot to Suzanne, because the two examples that Suzanne gave, the STEM program and the community and skills development, I want to learn a bit more about them, because of course, Shell, yeah, you have solved the problem in a way, because you're doing your own, running your own programs in a way, have solved two sets of problems. One is that maybe when the foundation is weak, maybe you can build on that, somehow provide them that little bit of lift before they enter into their jobs, once they enter Shell. And the other one is to provide opportunities to continue reskilling and upskilling. Suzanne, can you talk a bit more about this? Because you can see from a company's perspective is very different than an overall aggregate perspective on the gap between skills demanded and supplied. Over to you.
Absolutely, thank you. And I think just reinforcing what's been said there, we do view it in three different ways. So there is the education piece, which is really around STEM and making sure that equal opportunity, science, technology, and engineering, people have the opportunity to be educated in that space. And with regards to a STEM program, we also provide mentors and we run competitions and we provide kind of incentives for people to really get involved in this area of education, but also focusing, and as Janine said, on teachers. And there are some countries in the world where we actually physically support teachers as well in their training and their development. So we look at where we are operating and where there is a need to provide some support in that space. So that's in the kind of, the very bottom level, the youngest children that are people that we'd be working with or want to consider education with. But then you think too, as children or as teenagers come out of high school and they start to go through university, we also focus on how we have connections there. So we do have connections with a lot of universities where we provide either direct funding for specific courses where we see skills gaps, or we provide mentors, we provide awards and things like that to give people an opportunity to shine and to be recognized and pull through. We also provide, and I think it's very important, is internships. So there were a lot of internships that go across the breadth of a lot of different technical and non-technical disciplines where people will come in during their degrees or during their training programs and spend some time with Shell, understand and learn being in the company, what it's like. And I mean, the jump up, I was one of these people, I did it myself. I came in as an intern, and the jump that you get in just in terms of your own personal development and skills development is incredible over a very short period of time. And then if people choose to come and work for Shell directly from a degree-based program, there's also a very staged approach to developing that individual when they come in. I can honestly say that when I came in with my degree, I was not equipped to do my job as a geophysicist straight away. I did a internship first, and I came in and I did a graduate program essentially for 2 years. And then once that graduate program is finished, you still have what's called new technical professional development. You still continue to learn over a very long period of time. And it's the exceptions of that. When I finished my education, I hadn't finished learning. I continued to learn through, and I have to continue to learn throughout my career. Then there's a parallel group of people who didn't go through the formal university systems or maybe even didn't have the opportunity to finish high school. And then it's how do we support those individuals where it makes sense for us to be able to do so. And of course, we would love to be able to support in many different areas and industries, but we focus our support in the communities in which we work and on the skills gaps that we see. And we directly set up programs for people that can come and train to be a specific skill where we have a gap and then link that directly to employment. And I think that the idea of developing skills, as both Dato and Janine have shared, that you build the skills, you want those skills to be able to put to good use. And then, but when you have that ability to link the skills training to a job and employment, then the buy-in and take up from the individual, but also from either the regulator or the Department of Energy or whoever you're working with in that particular situation is obviously much higher. So doing it in partnership is quite important. And then just one thing that runs across everything, which I think is fundamental, is that we as people who have come through this kind of training and have been fortunate enough to have this kind of development then need to be able to look and give back as well. So with mentoring, with choosing to sit on advisory boards for universities, etc., or for schools, and making sure that we're feeding the most relevant information back into the system so that they can keep their programs up to date. Janine, I loved what you said with regards to innovation and curiosity. I think that's incredibly important to instill in children early so that they develop that ability to critically think and analyze, and that starts early, and that starts with how we fundamentally build the education system around them. So I think it's multifaceted. There are many different areas that we need to focus on. Of course, we put a lot of attention on the STEM part because we're an energy company and that's where we need to focus. But at the same time, we put a lot of attention as well on helping others develop digital and technical capabilities through all the different programs we have.
Thank you, Suzanne, for that. Now, I think we are, in the interest of time, I'm going to ask Dato and Janine to maybe provide your thoughts. You have seen some of the questions that have come through and what Suzanne also said. Of course, looking at this problem of skills, the future of skills development, from a perspective of a large firm that can afford to spend 100 million in 1 year alone for a skills development effort is very different than when we're looking at, the role of TESDA in the Philippines, for example, or the role of Ministry of Manpower and the BLKs and the SMKs in Indonesia. We have those face their own set of challenges in terms of raising the standards of training. And not just TVET, right? We're also talking about higher education as well. That is also critical. How do we prepare our higher education graduates for the type of employment opportunities? There was one question that was raised about what are the top 3 skills you think will be important. Maybe I will give you an opportunity also to provide your thoughts on what those 3 skills are. And one skill that I will throw out to the audience is writing, ability to write. I'm amazed and surprised how that simple yet critical skill is important all throughout one's career. But anyway, over to you, Janine, and then to Dato to end. Thank you.
So I feel like my response will be a little bit like wishing for more wishes. See, the ability to learn and growth mindset means that you can learn a lot of things, including writing. So that will be the skill that I think will be the most important. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. That's a great answer. Dato, over to you.
All right. I think what I would like, I think the importance, I think the evolution of the importance of education, skill-based education has actually come to a mature stage. If we are no more at the stage we are thinking about the importance of it, we are now talking about accelerating. And there is a great sense of responsibility and inclusiveness among the industry to assist the stakeholders, be it the government or the institution, in embarking this challenge. So I think there's a lot of, educators here in the audience and probably policymakers. I think the right way forward is, rather than institutions trying to embark and catch up the change of technology, the best way forward is to synergize, establish fruitful collaboration so that we'll be able to explore the potential and the growth in a very hands-on and real-time manner in pursuing this. I think the key word is to synergize, to collaborate in pursuing this agenda as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dato. That's a great conclusion to our discussion today. I think now I'm going to invite Mark to give concluding remarks before he hands it over to our MC. Thank you, Mark.
Listen, Samir, thank you very much indeed. This has been an absolutely fascinating discussion. I think there are a couple of things that I've taken away from this, not just as a politician and as a trade envoy to Brunei Darussalam, but as a father of 3 teenage kids. And that is a point that Janine made, which is that the technology is moving fast and skills move really fast. And that was backed up by Suzanne, who talked about the fact that life is not about staying still, it's about learning the whole time. And I think people of my generation, I'm in my late 50s, owe it, again, following on from Suzanne's point, to be help in terms of mentoring and help passing on those skills. And it's really, really important that, the young have a huge amount of energy to learn new skills, but the old have, dare I say, a little bit of wisdom, which comes through life experiences. But look, I think there are really 4 important points that I wanted to make. And I think the first is that all of this about changing technology is absolutely vitally important, but so is sustainability. And I think that we need to make sure that when we're doing all this training, we embed into that the whole idea of sustainability, and hired supports the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And I think that's something we need to really, really think sort of intrinsically in everything we do in that. The second is the UK support for the seed funding and sharing technical aid and vocational skills when it comes to the ASEAN BACS hired program. Seed funding is, is to help get things off the ground, and we really are very, very committed to that. And I think the third point is the pilot apprenticeship program. It's very interesting in the UK. About 20 years ago, we had a massive swing in the UK. 20, 30 years ago, we had a massive swing in the UK to having more people going to university. And the aim was to get half the population to go through university, half the school years that get a university education. Now we recognise that actually apprenticeships are really, really important. Learning those skills on the job is incredibly important, and so supporting that that apprenticeship program, I think, is absolutely vital. And I think the fourth point is really just to make reinforce that commitment the UK has to ASEAN. It's for me, it's a very, very big deal. I was an investment banker back in my 20s and 30s, and my specialisation was Asia. And so we were taking British and European money and investing it into new businesses in Asia. I kind of first went into China back when I was 23 in 1986, and and I've watched Asia develop over the years. The fact that the UK is a dialogue partner of ASEAN, and one of the first in 25 years, is a really big deal for us. I mean, don't underestimate how important we think this is. We look from our part in the Western world across to Asia, and we see that this is where the engine of economic growth is going to come for the next 100 years potentially, and being a dialogue partner with ASEAN is so important to us. So we are absolutely committed to helping that ASEAN has the right skills to flourish. You want to be the world's fourth largest economy by 2030. I think the projections have it as the biggest economy by 2050. In order to achieve that and then make the most of it, you need the right skills. And we are absolutely 100% committed here in the UK to doing everything we can to help ASEAN achieve all of its ambitions. And hopefully you guys can take us along for the ride as well, which would be fantastic. So Samir, look, thank you very much indeed for all of you. And Samir, back to you.
Thank you, Mark. That's a great summary. So I'm glad that you gave the closing remarks. Those 4 points, I couldn't have summed it up better. Thank you, Mark. I think we're going to hand it over to our MC for the event. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Samir, and all of the panelists. I think I've just said that twice, just to be sure you heard me say thank you. So, Dr. Samir, with that, we bring your session now to just about our conclusion of our afternoon today. So ahead of our closing remarks, we'd like to have a short video from Mitsubishi, one of our gold sponsors.
Mitsubishi Corporation is an integrated business enterprise with offices and subsidiaries in 90 countries and approximately 1,700 group companies worldwide. Through our 10 business groups, we are engaged in a wide range of businesses across virtually every industry, ranging from natural resources to items used in everyday life. Our employees manage a variety of operations in locations across the globe, working to achieve sustainable growth both for the company and society.
Thank you to Mitsubishi. So ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the close of our program, we'd like to now welcome back the Honorable Yanti Rahman, Chair of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council 2021, for the concluding remarks. Honorable Yanti, welcome back.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our roundtable today. And the discussion among our distinguished panelists and moderators have been very constructive, an eye-opener, and very fruitful. So the ASEAN Business Advisory Council is truly honored indeed to host this auspicious roundtable session, and we would like to express our sincerest appreciation once again to all our keynote speakers, our respective panelists and moderators, and everyone for their valuable time. We received up to about 700 registrants today for this roundtable. Thank you so much for listening in. Now, the roundtable today reminds us that digital transformation is becoming more vital than ever in ASEAN. And to ensure we are continuously adapting to these changes is through reskilling and upskilling in response to the actual needs of today's industry. Now, the time has come for the industry and individuals to embrace the upskilling imperative, and it is my absolute pleasure to share with you on our upcoming workshop with the employers on data analytics under Hyatt's collaboration with the UK Department of International Trade next week on the 6th of October. So please lock the date. We are indeed grateful for this partnership, as the UK is officially ASEAN's dialogue partner and supporting Hyatt through their seed funding and technical, as well as vocational skills expertise in developing this regional pilot apprenticeship program for data analysts. So we will also have another programs along the pipeline of this Hyatt project, working closely with our other partners, namely Darussalam Enterprise is our strategic partner, GIZ, and AFWC, among others. So we look forward to expand this Hyatt project and highly welcome future collaborators in striving for the future of what we want to see in our workforce. To conclude, I believe it is through a spirit of collaboration and unity that we can overcome the challenges and build a resilient workforce for a stronger, sustainable ASEAN digital future together. And Sama-Sama, as reflected in our ASEAN Back theme this year. I look forward to seeing you again in our ASEAN Business Investment Summit on the 25th of October and our ASEAN Business Awards Gala Night, 9th of November. Again, please lock the date. So stay safe and in good health. Thank you, everyone.
Honorable Yanti, thank you so much. And with, ladies and gentlemen, we bring to a close our roundtable this afternoon. Now, we will be ending the live transmission, but there is still plenty of virtual spaces available for you to enjoy each other's companies, to network, and also to enjoy our virtual booths. So on the final note, a very quick big thank you again to our sponsors and partners. Thank you so much to Brunei LNG, BIBD, Brunei Shell, Baiduri Bank, Standard Chartered Bank, HSBC, Zulik Pharma, Brunei Gas Carriers, Mitsubishi, and our partners, Radio Television Brunei, Borneo Bulletin, Media Permata, Darussalam Enterprise, and our supporters, Ecobumi Architect, Dynamic Technologies, ADIN Group of Companies, ASEAN BAC, and the ASEAN Joint Business Council. It's been a really enriching afternoon. It's been great to have you with us. We shall see you soon, once again, for the ASEAN Business Investment Summit, October 25th, and November, our award session. Until then, from Brunei, thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon.